stand by, and we will now call to order the workshop for this evening. Good evening again, and welcome to the City of Pasco workshop meeting. The council thanks you for being part of our city government. At workshop meetings, the council discusses issues, but no formal action is taken. Agenda packets are available on the City of Pasco's website at www.pasco-wad.gov/agenda. This meeting is also being televised live on PSC-TV, channel 191 on Spectrum Cable in Pasco and Richland, and is streamed on the city's Facebook page, website, YouTube channel, and Microsoft Teams webinar. This and previous council meeting video is available on the city's website. Lastly, the public may submit their comments and or questions by contacting the city manager, city clerk, or by using the Ask Pasco app. Number 3, Madam Clerk, if you'd take the roll again, just so we're by the book, please.
Councilmember Campos.
Here.
Cotta.
Here.
Figueroa.
Present.
Hernandez.
Present.
Perales.
Still here.
Milne.
I'm present.
And Grimm.
Is also still here. Thank you.
We still have 7 present.
And I'm going to ask, since it's on the agenda, I'm actually going to ask everybody to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance again, since it's there. This is America's 250th birthday, and my wife calls me the most patriotic person she's ever met, so thank you for joining me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for joining me in that. Number 4, verbal reports from council members. Councilmember Cotta.
I only attended the city improvement plan and transportation improvement plan meeting, which was great to hear the city staff go through the various projects and things we're working on. Talked about the 76 overpass and developments there and the justifications for it. But it was, I thought, that was a very well run meeting. I enjoyed listening to it and asking questions.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Perales.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be brief. I attended the Northwest Carpenters Union Journeyman graduation. It was great to see a huge new generation of skilled tradesmen and professionals, women, men. I mean, these guys, it's been a grueling couple of years, and it was really cool to hear their stories and what they're going to be doing next. Also attended the Tri-City Association of Realtors Awards Luncheon, where I was actually nominated for Citizen of the Year, but I gracefully lost to John Marshall, who was from the Pasco School District. And if you don't know about what he tragically passed away in last December, but he played a key role in the Team Pasco House program, and that's through the CTE program through the Pasco School District. They build homes across the city and stuff, and it lets the kids get really hands-on experience. So I've attended a couple of those ribbon cuttings for those homes, and it's great to see those kids just really beam up looking at something that they built. And so, John Marshall, he'll be sadly missed, but he leaves a really lasting legacy with that program. And then I met with the Atlanta Business Association this past week. Met with a prospective business owner that wants to bring in a bakery and a cafe, perhaps into downtown. They're definitely looking at a couple of vacant properties down there. But yeah, it was a great sign of the continued interest in downtown. Thank you.
Love it. Thank you. Councilmember Campos.
Yeah, I also attended the Capital and Transportation projects meeting. Staff did a very good job of giving us the information. We had a great time after the meeting, being able to come and see the maps up close and ask questions, and they made themselves available to really answer all the questions that we had. So I really do appreciate all of that. I do want to just plug in, we do have another one tomorrow, I believe, at 4 o'clock, and so that's going to be at Ray Reynolds, I believe. So I want to encourage everyone to come on out, come look at what the projects are happening in our city. It's very valuable information. We would love to see more people show up. And then I attended on Friday the Casa de los Chilaquiles. That was awesome to see their ribbon ceremony, and their food is amazing. And so it was a great time to just meet everybody there and to have the food. A really cool restaurant, and we're excited that they're here.
Thank you. Councilmember Campos. Councilmember Figueroa.
You go first.
Your light was quicker.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like a game show up
Yeah.
there.
I just want to add, so I had the opportunity to help with the Parks and Recs kids camp that they had last week. So I was able to help out with the soccer portion that they had on Wednesday. So it's just phenomenal to see the kids are on spring break, going out there and enjoying time and kicking the balls around and getting to learn a little bit of what I believe is the greatest sport in the world, but I'm gonna be a little biased. But Parks and Recs had a really phenomenal camp all week long, being able to showcase different sports, and so that was phenomenal to see those kids out there. So.
Thank you for your investment in the young people. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I got a chance to cover for you on Friday at the Casa de Los Chiquiles, and I will say it was probably the best breakfast I've had in the last month. Phenomenal. Really fresh. Felt like it was like grandma's cooking, if my grandma was Mexican. But anyway, it was good, and I would recommend people to try it out. Again, the staff and everybody was very friendly, and they did a great job on the remodel, and it's right across from Safeway there on 20th. So, again, I would recommend people to come out and try it.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys getting out into the city and participating at all levels in your official capacity, and just, yeah, loving and just being a part of the city. And thank you, yes, for covering Friday night, especially I had a kids kind of event at a school and everything like that. So really appreciate you guys covering. As far as, yes, I attended some of those meetings also, but I guess the big one this last week was the Benton Franklin Transit meeting, where we did unanimously decide to terminate our contract with the CEO, Thomas Drost. And so we will begin the process of looking for a new CEO to lead the organization. We have an interim at the time who has been covering Mr. Lebansky for the past month while Mr. Drost was on administrative leave. And so we're looking at continuing to support him in that process as we, kind of figure out our long-term goal there. And for those wondering some of the details and stuff, our lawyer, legal counsel, Mr. Bishop, is going through, and I kind of dread using this word, but redacting some names of some of the innocent, just because that's been in the news so much, but to really just protect some people, but those that, perhaps are victims through this whole thing. So anyways, when that's made available, it'll be available to the public for all they need and everything. So with that, let's move on to number 5, items for discussion with opportunity for public comment. The public may comment on each topic scheduled for discussion up to 2 minutes per person, with a total of 8 minutes per item. If opposing sides wish to speak, then both sides receive an equal amount of time to speak for up to 4 minutes of each side. And just as a quick reminder, since the gallery definitely had some people in it tonight, this was something that in previous council sessions wasn't allowed, but the prior council wanted to be more transparent, more open to the public. So we started having this time where people can comment on these specific issues before they go to what could be a decision next week at our city council meetings. So with that, just remember, it's only 2 minutes per person, up to 8 minutes per item, and we need to split it on opposing sides. With that, let's move to letter A, frontage improvement in RS20 zone, sidewalk, streetlights, etc. 10-minute staff presentation. And Ms. Manson, we're going back to you again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight is a policy discussion for the City Council for this workshop tonight, and this is related to frontage improvements in the RS12 and RS20 zones. And just a disclaimer at the beginning of this, I'm using RS20 as a reference throughout. Next week, there'll be a public hearing to potentially change RS20 to R15. It was a topic I brought back to council a few weeks ago, and we're adding a few parcels into that. So I'm going to call it RS20 because that's what it is today, and it might change next week, but it is still RS20 is one of our lowest density zones, and it will be with our RS15 changes. Happy to answer questions on that if you have any, but this is related to the improvement requirements for those two zones. And specifically, we are looking at whether to restore the pre-2019 exemption from sidewalks, curbs, gutter, and streetlights. Previously in the Riverview area, these requirements were optional, and then it became not optional and required for these areas after 2019. And I have had applicants, I believe this topic has been a discussion of City Council. I know that when I first started a year ago, it was one of the first things I heard from the Home Builders Association and several applicants. Hey, is our curb, gutter, sidewalks, and lighting needed in the Riverview area? It's sort of silly, in their opinion, to build improvements that are isolated from other utilities. So you can see if there's a short plot that's built, sometimes there's a little strip of sidewalk and street lights. And so we've evaluated the pros and cons of this request, and staff is advising council on our professional and technical opinion on this matter, and it is ultimately a policy decision. So happy to answer questions throughout the presentation or at the end if you'd like. So purpose and background here, I just mentioned that ordinance that has been eliminated. And throughout the presentation, I'll cover the other topics here on the right-hand side of the screen. So with the two zones that I mentioned, and I'll just give you a sneak peek of the map first before I go over the data. This is the RS12 and RS20 zones, generally in the southern area of the city, shown in bright green, yellow. Can't miss it on the map there. These are the areas we are referring to, and these two zones make up 35% of all residentially zoned land in Pasco. And so with this policy decision for this area, it could have significant long-term impacts on the infrastructure and how we manage utilities and safety in the area related to population growth and density. And this area is planned to grow. There are some utility issues in the area that we've previously discussed related to sewer, and these are predominantly single-family zones currently. RS12 does have more flexibility with unit types. The RS20 zone, soon to be RS15 if approved by council, is a predominantly single-family zone. However, by the end of the year, we will be required to allow 4 to 6 units on every property in Pasco. We are very far ahead in middle housing already on all the other zones. This zone will see that change in those requirements. Okay, so there are two benefits that staff identified with waiving this requirement, which would be exempting frontage improvement requirements in these areas. And the first is frontage improvements do add a significant cost for development. So without these improvements, the development would be a lot more cost effective for the developer and the property owner to build properties and develop at county level frontage improvement requirements. And then so that could also encourage housing development without these costs. And then the other benefit identified by staff is that these areas in Riverview typically do have a more rural and semi-rural character. And some residents, I can't really speak for all residents because I haven't spoke with all residents, but I know that some residents would prefer less urban infrastructure in these areas. So that could be seen as a benefit to waiving these exemptions. And then we did want to point out some of the information related to the urban growth areas, and maybe the map will show the donut holes. It does. So those dark red areas, we refer to those as the donut holes in the city of Pasco, and these are properties that are surrounded by city limits but actually designated as county property. So if we did waive citywide or frontage improvement regulations for the Riverview area, it would be hard for the city to, request the county to do the same when those areas develop, or when we take those areas in at county developed standards. It would be hard to enforce city level development standards for that if we waived it for the rest of the area. And then, so the concern here would be consistency with frontage improvements and long-term costs. And then currently the city does require that UGA areas, when annexed into the city, build to city standards. If we exempt our own zone, it weakens that negotiating position. And then this also would conflict with the comprehensive plan goal of connected transportation network throughout the city. And that's the goal with city planning. If you look at it from an urban planning standpoint, which is my planning background, is in cities in Washington State, you are required to grow based on the state numbers allocated to the city. And the idea is to have compact development within the cities. Whether you agree with it or not, that's what the UGA is formulated to do, to have compact, efficient development within the city. And that means houses closer together, houses going up, and then a coordinated infrastructure system so that you can fit more within a smaller space, and it prevents urban sprawl, is what it's called, outside of the city boundaries, where you just keep building and building and adding roads and homes. So this idea of having a consolidated transportation network for these housing units does fall within the urban planning and urban growth area concept in Washington State. And then another concern is if the infrastructure isn't built today, the city will likely pay for it later at a much higher cost. And, you know, as most of you know, nothing is getting cheaper. Everything is getting more expensive. So if we do decide to exempt the frontage improvements now, the curb, gutter, street, sidewalk, lighting, then at a later time, if that area becomes dense and the sidewalks and lighting is needed, I would say it's needed, you know, there currently, but needed for larger development, it would be a higher expense for the city to do so. Okay, middle housing mandate. I have already provided an overview on this, so the whole group should be experts by now on missing middle housing, and we will be touching on it throughout the comprehensive plan process. As I mentioned before, Pasco is ahead with middle housing as compared to other cities of our size. A few years ago, the city council did adopt middle housing policies, mainly in the north areas of town, that allowed for a variety of different housing types, single family attached, duplexes, triplexes, and that would be allowed now in the Riverview area by the end of the year. So the key issue, we could see increased density without supporting the infrastructure needs, and then more residents means more pedestrians and more demand for sidewalk facilities and lighting for safe urban environments. And then without right-of-way, future infrastructure becomes difficult and expensive. The easiest way to get right-of-way dedications is when an applicant is developing. That's where you can trigger the need for right-of-way dedication to the city. If we waive that and try and do it later, it becomes a very expensive and more cumbersome process to do it for a road project. If we can get it along the way as the sites trigger that requirement, that is much easier for the city to do. And yeah, that's just one of the tools we have to get that. Okay. The city also has a adopted complete streets policy that supports safe and multimodal transportation. And this exemption would conflict with that policy. The code does allow for exceptions throughout the city, but that's only for specific cases, and it's not a broad opt-out. So this would be a policy inconsistency that council could consider while discussing this topic. Okay, we got a few more slides here. So for future needs, this is really about this recommendation, or the pros and cons staff is listing, is really about right away and future needs and protecting our future options. I mentioned that it's the lowest cost opportunity at the permit stage to get these requirements, and then it becomes more expensive later on in the process. And yeah, like it says on that, right away once and retrofit never. That's a good way to put it. Later on, it does become a lot more costly. And then it becomes harder to meet the GMA requirements that I mentioned before. And then from a safety impact, we believe that without the lighting in neighborhoods creates a public safety impact. And Pasco already has sidewalk gaps, and exemptions will make these permanent. And this is a high-level summary. I won't go through all of this that I touched on in the presentation. And then there are some decision points that are listed in the staff report. There is a recommendation by staff to maintain the current code, which is to require these gaps. And there was also, I'm not sure if I mentioned this clearly enough, it is clunky to have gaps in the system when you look at it, physically and from a system-wide approach. But if you can show for grant purposes, and maybe Director Sarah can touch on this if I butcher it, but when you're applying for grants at the state level for system-wide improvements, it's easier to get a grant or make a case for a grant if you have invested in the infrastructure as a city. And invested can be through applicants or through code requirements. So if you do have sporadic pieces of the system built out, yes, it looks a little funky, but from a grant standpoint, if you've shown progress, you can have an easier time possibly getting the funding to complete the system. If you do nothing and you go to the state or whatever grants you're seeking and say, we've done nothing, help us solve this problem, I don't think we have an easier time getting the grants. Did I touch on that correctly? Okay. So that was another reason. So we have some decision points on the screen for you. And like I mentioned, this is a discussion. I know that we have some interested parties in the audience as well, and I thank them for coming and participating in this process. So happy to answer any questions that you may have related to this topic.
Thank you, Ms. Manson. Any questions from council? Comments? Thank you, Mr. Perales.
I'll go ahead and start it off. So this past weekend, I had nothing to do, so I went and drove in this area. Roughly about 5 miles, just drove in circles. And we already have gaps. There's sometimes I do find sidewalks and it goes to nowhere. And I'm thinking, well, how long has this house been here? We haven't thought about going in there and putting in a sidewalk yet. So I think that, to me, that's like the main point. We're not going to go in and do that anytime soon. Probably not in my lifetime. I remember I lived in a duplex in Kennewick. Same thing. My street had no sidewalks. It was pretty dense. But again, they still haven't put sidewalks in on that street. They haven't put sidewalks in on another busier street where there was some apartments put in. So I'm not sure what happened there, because I'm sure they're urban planning in Kennewick the same way we are. But I'm not trying to cheap on infrastructure costs, but in some of these areas, especially in the Riverview area, it has a character, it has a feel. We have people come in and talk about not putting a grocery store right on the corner of Road 100 right there. This is kind of the same thing. Let's just apply some common sense. Again, a lot of these areas are already rural. They have that county feel. And in our lifetime, I bet you, when I'm sitting on my rocking chair in front of my house, I can take another drive over to the Riverview area, and we're probably not going to put a sidewalk in on any of those spots. But yeah, we're going to have these little spots here and there, sidewalk here to nowhere. It just makes no sense. Curb and gutter, and it just ends. It just doesn't make any sense to me. That's really my biggest argument there. I can go on and on and on and talk about safety in here. If we're going to talk about safety, I would like to see data in regards to that. If by not doing that, it's making it unsafe. I see people walking up and down those streets. We have people, we're going to be talking about that later, about people speeding on those streets. Complete streets was an issue when we decided to, or the previous councils decided to implement it. It was a cost issue, so it's not like everyone loved that urban planning tool. But at the end of the day, I think this is all context sensitive. The context in that area is we just don't need to do that there, and we should not put any more costs on developers, because as you said, Ms. Mattson, the cost of housing and cost of infrastructure is going up, so that's money that they can save, that they can go build other housing. Again, if I'm going to put my thumb on the scale of what I want to see in that area, I want half-acre lots. I want 1 acre lots. That's what I want to see in that area. I understand the density requirements from the state, but, I think we need to start pushing back on the state, because I don't want a lot of things that we're seeing coming from that side of the state as it is, and this is one of them. I think the character of this area is great the way it is, and I think we need to start maintaining it and pushing back a little bit. I would be in favor of just doing a full repeal of it, and if there is issues that people want to put on us that we're not following certain codes and policies, well, then we'll just deal with them. But at the end of the day, I think this area needs to stay the way it is, and let people put in septic. We're already going towards changing that policy. This is kind of dovetailing into this. It doesn't make any sense in a lot of this here. Please go take a drive. I just don't see us doing that. I don't see us urbanizing this side of the city at least not in my lifetime. So, my plea to the council would be just a full repeal of this policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I've walked this district since it's basically my district. There's been some changes in the layout of redistricting, but overall, I know it fairly well as well. So, Ms. Mattson, can you kind of run me through? So, I know, like, you know, when, say you have a 2-acre lot and then they put in 12 houses or 10 houses, to me that makes sense having like sidewalks or whatever. But what if, say, somebody was to divide their land, say they had 10 acres, they divide it into 3-acre lots or 2.5-acre lots, and there's one house. Would that person that had the one house, would they still have to do a sidewalk if it was like, say, off Road 76 or 72, some of the more rural areas? Would they be bound by that? Because to me that doesn't make sense. But when they're doing like more heavy infill in an area, to me it makes sense then to have the sidewalks, the lights, because you don't want to have 12 houses in a 2-acre or 2-acre area and then not have those amenities. So could you kind of walk me through, if you had one house, say somebody did buy, or is that not with the kind of state law, is that not like, I mean, can somebody still buy a 2-acre lot and then just put one house? And would they have to put in a sidewalk and lights, or is that, what would be the walkthrough on that?
So I can talk about the zoning and then I'll pass it over to Richa. So if there was an applicant who did want to, our code is a little unclear about allowing just one house on any size property. So that's a little nuanced. I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but if we did have an applicant wanting to develop a 5-acre piece of property, they would need to meet the density requirements for the zone, which is currently 2 units per, so half-acre per lot. So they would need to subdivide to at least a half-acre. It's my understanding of the code that frontage improvements would be triggered for one home. I believe it's triggered just by, you know, any construction. I don't know if it's a dollar figure in Pasco. I don't know that off the top of my head, but I believe it would be triggered for one home.
I would also like to add that while we may not want Riverview to look different, the middle housing is a state law that takes away local control on what we want to see as development. And so you brought up the 5-acre parcel. The property owner could build middle housing, which are fourplexes, duplexes, row houses, things like that. And so as you build those, and I'm going to call it denser for this area, lot by lot, what you see in 20 years is a lot of people not quite designed for infrastructure that exists there. So what we would like as staff is to not just talk about sidewalk, but the right-of-way as well. Because the sidewalk you can build. It might be expensive, but you can build. But as you get more and more middle housing in there, which Riverview is ripe for, because there's larger lots, so it makes more sense. Versus if you have half-an-acre lots, the most that makes sense is an ADU, which is an accessory dwelling unit in your backyard. If you have 1 acre, you might be able to build a duplex or fourplex. So this area is ripe for that middle housing, which we do not have control over. And I don't think it's going to happen maybe in our lifetimes. I think Councilmember Perales is right. But probably in the next 40 years, as development gets even more expensive, this area might get a lot more denser than we would like. And with that comes infrastructure pressures. And we, at the very least, need to have enough right-of-way so we have enough land to have pipes and wires underneath our roads, much less a sidewalk. So a discussion of council regarding that would be really helpful as well.
Okay, well, that kind of answers somewhat of my question, so thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilmember Figueroa.
Yeah, I think it's just a topic that we have to be really sensible because there's so many things at play. One of the things that I do acknowledge is that to require full improvements at time of development for developers can be a financial barrier. I understand that part. And it can definitely slow down the housing growth. But I think that we need to, as council, kind of put our heads together and begin to think of how can we, instead of choosing either or, how can we make it both and? Lowering development costs or helping some of that financial strain without having to compromise some of the things like pedestrian safety. I mean, I've driven through these streets in the summer. There's a lot of kids that are riding their bicycles and walking to the neighborhood park and stuff. And there's a lot of signs that say, caution kids at play, because there are no sidewalks for them to kind of walk into those places. And even the bus stops, I've been behind those bus stops where it's just, right in the street and they're getting off. So I think that's really important when it comes to safety. Also the continuous network that we're building with these transportation plans. I think it's important, if we're already investing and planning for that, that we should have some sort of plan for that and not just forfeit everything else. But also we're also forfeiting some grant eligibility, which we know that's important for us, because when we're looking for projects and money, everybody's like, well, we don't want to be taxed and we don't want to tax our residents. But if we're forfeiting some of this grant eligibility because we chose not to go through with this, I think that we really have to be really careful, and it goes back to the right of way as well. I think that's really important of just long-term planning and sustainability. So we have to put our heads together and see, can we maybe find a middle ground? I'm not sure what that looks like. Maybe some phase improvement options where developers don't have to do all of it at the beginning, but we phase it in through. I don't know. But I'm open for any other conversations or what that would look like or plans.
Thank you. Councilman Cotta.
Yeah, I'm just kind of reserving comment to see if there's anyone here that really wants to, speak to this issue, who actually lives there. In the sense that, if they don't want any of this stuff, well then we're in some sense devaluing the area by putting it there. And we wouldn't want to do that either. So I'm just interested in what the people who live in the community, what they want, what they desire. If they want more sidewalks and more lights, or if they want the more country feel, because obviously that's going to be an attraction to why people move there.
Okay, thank you. Well, you set me, I'll go, and I'll go back to you, Mayor Pro Tem, since I haven't chimed in. I do live on there. You set me up really good there. First of all, I want to thank staff for all the excellent considerations you guys have offered. And I agree with a lot. I mean, overall, I would be for kind of preserving the character of this. But one of the things that kind of concerns me is, prior councils wanted to preserve the area, but preserving the character and bringing down development costs might have the opposite effect, where suddenly there's a flurry of development there. So I think we need to be mindful of that, even though overall I am still for this. And to the Deputy City Manager's comment about really interested in direction from us concerning right-of-way at the just how we're going to preserve right-of-way. Can we do that, Ms. Sigdell, at the time of development? Just cut that off and just say, hey, we may not need it now, but in the future, we're going to do that?
That's something we can discuss further with our legal counsel and get back to you.
Okay, and let me ask you another suggestion that was brought up to me that I can't take credit for being my own. What about offering a lid to where maybe having the developers or homeowners or something like that sign some kind of contract saying they would not fight a future lid? Because I agree with Councilman Figueroa that, trying to find some kind of middle ground here where, maybe we do preserve the character. Maybe we don't let them put that at the time. But, I guess as this development happens in years, decades, or half a century down the road, that when it's time, the taxpayers aren't on the hook for that bill, especially as prices exponentially increase. Would we be able to do that? Is there legal standing for that, or a legal foothold?
I do not think that there is an issue with that, as long as we have the width of the road as we would need for the density that we anticipate this area to become. We truly do not, middle housing for the city of Pasco is not going to be effective till beginning of next year, after our comp plan is, 6 months after our comp plan is adopted. So we do not really know what the impact of that is going to be. But we can, as long as we have appropriate right-of-way, that is the key, where if the width of the land is enough, then you're not having to buy somebody's yard and start tearing down things that get exponentially more expensive. So we can, LIDs are a great idea. We can look into that in combination of appropriate right-of-ways, and get back to council on that option.
Thank you. I guess that would be my 2 points is one, if we could, at the time of development, yes, just preserve the right of way, get that in there. And then, yes, have developers or homeowners or landowners, sign some kind of contract that they wouldn't oppose a lid if we were to, impose that later on to pay for that infrastructure. I think that might be the middle ground we are potentially looking for. I want to hear from developers. Yep, one more second. And then I had just one last comment here. Just this question for Ms. Mattson. All of our efforts to preserve the Riverview area over the last few years, if I'm understanding everything I've read and everything I've understood you say over the last few meetings, has House Bill 1110 pretty much made our preservation priorities a moot point because the state's going to do what they want to do? And to Councilmember Peralez's point, perhaps there's a time where we do need to push back on the state and, be the one. And obviously that's a huge decision for the council, but is HB 1110 making a lot of this discussion of preservation a moot point?
Yes, the lot sizes is what we have control over at this point. So in the RS20 zone, or soon to be RS15, lot sizes in the RS15, if approved, on April 20th would yield lot sizes just under 15,000 square feet, which are pretty big. But the bigger the lot, the easier it is to put a fourplex, 2 duplexes, a triplex, and a cottage home and ADUs on there. So yes, we can do what we want on a city level to preserve the character, but as far as allowing 4 to 6 units on each of those 15,000 square foot lots, we do not have a say in it. It might be slowed down a bit by infrastructure. If we make, if sewer, connecting to sewer is a requirement, for instance, that would naturally slow it down for middle housing. But you're correct. And yeah, like I've mentioned several times, I don't know of any city that has pushed back on the state related to this. And, I have opinions on it. I think there's definitely a risk to do that. So I don't know if I would advise you, but maybe somebody else here will. But I just haven't seen anybody push back on the state and be successful with this.
Perfect. I appreciate that, because a lot of the comments I see on social media and elsewhere, just in person around the community, is people stop growth, stop building houses, stop the density, stop this. And I think it is important to know that this is House Bill 1110. This is not us. This is the state mandating that we do these things. It's really frustrating and an important, civics reminder for us to, take in once in a while that there is a state constitution, but we don't have a constitution as a city. We're on a charter from the state. Basically, everything we do is basically given to us by the power of the state. We can't even raise our speed limits or lower them outside of the threshold of what the state's given us. So pretty frustrating sometimes. So going back to just finalizing my thoughts, I would be for, yes, the lid for future to protect the taxpayers and make the developers or whatever pay down the road, have them not oppose that, and also just making sure we get the right of way at the time of development. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. To answer Councilman Cotta's question, obviously I live in the Riverview area as well, since I represent a huge portion of that district. I would say there was a development that has gone in across from my house, or really close to my house, on Road 100 in Court. I hated it because I used to see trees when I came out, and then now there's a massive amount of houses, like 12 or 14. But I will say, since they're building the houses, having sidewalks and lights is nicer than not having them. So my question would be, say if you didn't have the mandate for sidewalks and lights, would like the ProMade that's off of Road 100, would they have had the option of not being able to put those things in? Because even though that would give like a county feel to it, it would actually be very bad if you were going through there and there wasn't lights and sidewalks, especially with the newer homes. And I've actually already seen a whole bunch of people actually move into those homes, which is kind of crazy how quickly it went through. As far as the homes being built, that's another subject. But if there was no mandate for lights and sidewalks in the ProMade development off of Road 100, if this was changed, would they be able to not to do it, or would they still have to do it being that big of a development with townhouses and all that sort of stuff?
If we exempt it,
Correct.
just blanket across RS12 and RS20, then they would not have to do that.
And it really depends on what the current, the designation that we're talking about right now are the RS-20s and RS-12s, soon to be RS-15s. But if that was the designation of that property, then yes, you would not see the frontage improvements. I also want to add that LIDs are not, once the property has been sold and then there's a petition to do an LID, however that gets originated, that is on the property owners of that time. And if that property then is sold after the LID has been formed, usually if there's a bank involved, they want that LID paid off and not move on to the next homeowner, but usually the property owner at that time would have to pay for the cost of the frontage improvements. I want to make that clear.
Okay, well, thank you for that clarification.
Councilman Perales, just one second. Let me ask one clarifying question. Could we just, in regard to his question, could we, or where we'd be making an exemption, but along arterials like Court Street or Road 68, where we could exempt the exemptions, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, to allow, infrastructure improvements like the Mayor Pro Tem suggesting along those major arterials? Is that something we could do, or are we getting too X-Acto knife and?
Too X-Acto knife, and it also increases the risk for the city because we start losing our reasonings for doing certain things.
Okay, perfect.
That's not to say that that's not possible. I'm just speaking with, as you're telling me information, I'm reacting to it. But we can definitely take that and talk with our legal counsel.
No, thank you. This is an excellent discussion for the public to hear. Councilman Perales.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just want to make a clarification. I'm not looking to restore the full exemption for citywide. It's just in these zones. RS-12, RS-15, RS-20, whatever we're calling it now, just in these areas. I don't know if staff wants to speak to the alternatives, because kind of what you were saying was the right-of-way dedication only. So I don't know if the staff wants to speak to these, because a lot of things that we're talking about, or that some council members are talking about, are right here in these alternatives. So, I mean, I went ahead and went for the full restore full exemption, but there is two other alternatives that have been given to us. Excuse me.
Yeah, happy to do that. So we have one alternative here, which is a combined approach where you take a fee in lieu of the improvements, and that would still be a cost to the developer where they would provide an estimate of the curb gutter, sidewalk, lighting, and it would be provided by an engineer, and then the city would approve it, and then the city would take in those funds. So I'm not sure if there's actually a cost savings there than the developer building it themselves. And maybe Director Sarah can speak to that if she's aware, but I believe that's not necessarily cost savings. I guess it could save time in permitting because you're not building it and physically constructing those improvements, but the city would take in that money and I believe use that for future improvements in the area. And that would be combined. So this is approach one. So in the staff report, we have three alternatives. So you take in the fee in lieu and then require the right-of-way dedication, which I would just recommend is just, something we do no matter what. If we exempt anything else, I'm not recommending we do that, but if anything, the right-of-way dedication, that's the easiest time to get it. When the development occurs, you just slice off what you need and you don't have to go back and bother the homeowner who purchased this great house later on down the road and say, can we take out your bonsai bush or whatever you have in the front yard that you're in love with now? So I think that would be essential. So that's option one, combined approach, fee in lieu and right-of-way dedication. Option two is right-of-way dedication only and not taking in the fee. So that means the cost of the development is on now the residents for the city, for this third of the city that we're now exempting 35% of residential areas. That cost would go on to the residents, or if we could find grant funding, or if we did the LID approach, the cost would go on to the future homeowner. The developer would not be on the hook for the cost unless they still own the property, which is unlikely. Usually they develop at a low cost, sell it, and then they're on to the next great project, but then wouldn't be on the hook for this. And then the third option is to restore the full exemption. So those are the three main alternatives we've listed for the group to consider.
Okay, thank you. Well, why don't we move to the public at this point, and then maybe we can gather our thoughts here at the end. So if anybody wants to come up that's in the chamber and speak on this issue, we'd be happy to take that. Mr. Bauman? Name and city or county of residence?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm Stephen Bauman. Live here I'm surrounded by the city of Pasco, but I actually live in the donut hole. And
Jeff Kelly.
so we are both developers here, and thank you for this opportunity to address you. Really appreciate, Haley, all the time that you put into this. Very, very thorough presentation. I'll cut right to the chase. In your packet under the alternatives, the alternative number 2, I think, is the most reasonable and would be the one that I would recommend. I think it's completely reasonable to ask that developers dedicate the right-of-way. That's not an additional expense. It's a very reasonable step to take in the process. And then I want to give you a little thought to ponder. When we go and do these, in some cases, on one lot, you may improve the frontage across one lot of 100 or 150 feet. And down the road, many years potentially, when the city decides it's appropriate to do all of the improvements, and the example I would use is Sylvester. They didn't save any of the improvements that happened in piecemeal over time on Sylvester. They took everything out and they started from scratch and put it all back in. And I think that's what Councilman Peral, as you alluded to, the sidewalk to nowhere. I think that for developers to sign a letter of no protest to a future local improvement district or road improvement district is very reasonable. And I think that alternative 2 preserves the area that we live in. I currently live in this area. I've developed a lot of lots in this area. It is very popular for people to live in that, where it's darker at night. You still have a little bit of that country feel. I personally live on a half-acre lot. I have a handful of chickens in my backyard. I have a garden in my backyard. It's big enough to do that. And so thank you for the opportunity to share those thoughts with you and perhaps my colleague.
Just to add to that, I support that too. I live on Road 76. I like the rural feel of it. I understand the HB 1110, the higher density being pushed on the cities. I have a hard time believing that that would be a factor for half-acre lots. I can't believe that the health department would approve a septic system that would accommodate a 6-plex unit, but I may be wrong. I don't know. So that would be one thing I would question. I don't think multifamily would be affordable to build on a half-acre lot. Usually the multifamily is going to be built on smaller lots because it's more effective to build on a $100,000 lot versus a $250,000 lot and put a 2-plex or a 4-plex on it. So I don't know if that's quite a factor for the larger lots. You get down to the 10,000, 12,000 square foot lots, that might work. That might be something where you could put a 4-plex, but I still think sewer would probably be needed. In our area, we don't have sewer, and so that's where we're stuck with septics. And so when you go to a larger development like that, to half-acre lots, and then to have to do all the frontage improvements, like the smaller lots, it's just not affordable. So anyway, I'm for the option
Alternative 2.
Mm-hmm.
And
Perfect, 10 seconds.
Thanks.
if I could, Mayor Pro Tem, that pro-made lots would not be exempted from the frontage improvements. They're too small a lots. They would not fall under that 15,000 or less, so they would still have to have the improvements. The last thought is it's significantly less expensive for the city to maintain what is in the rear view area versus the curb gutter, sidewalk, street lights, all of that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you turn the timer just a little bit more slightly my way? Perfect, thank you. So that was 4 minutes, kind of generally for the preservation of number 2. Does anybody in the chamber feel the opposite about it and want the opportunity to speak?
If I speak now, will I still be able to speak?
Oh yeah, no. This is just for. That's a great point of clarification. This is just for this. Or would you be
Okay. Reed Simpson.
before 1 second? Is this for the infrastructure improvements or against?
I want to talk about the whole preserving the Riverview area.
In the general sense,
About
for or
this- about
against?
this stuff here.
For or against?
I guess I'm kind of just pointing out a little bit of an inconsistency.
Okay, perfect. Let me just, the way this is set up, I just need to make sure, and I'm happy to hear those. I just want to make sure we have an opportunity for someone that is opposed. Is there somebody adamantly opposed to this that would like to speak up? Hearing none, go right ahead.
Hey, I just want to point out that you want to preserve the Riverview area, and then you turn around and approve of a 500-unit townhouse on Harris Farm. That is hypocrisy at the height. City Council changed the Harris Farm from going from medium density to high density, and now we've got 500-unit complex out there on just 20 acres. And yet you're worried about the preserving the Riverview area? That's not so good. That's hypocrisy. Thank you.
Understand, thank you. Anybody else? We have room for one more comment, either for or against. One more comment on this issue? Not seeing anybody. Oh, come on up.
Understand if I'm opposed or opposed.
That's fine, Miss Wade. Come on up.
Not away.
That's fine. We're just trying to be fair and offer both sides ample opportunity to speak. Name and city of residence, please.
So I've personally gone through.
Name and city of residence,
I'm Amber here in Pasco.
Thank you.
I have personally been through the adding the sidewalks later, and that is just a pain in the neck. What you're postponing is while you're developing the land, the home that I lived in previously in College Place also small, and then trying to build bigger. When they installed the sidewalks, it made living a nightmare where you're trying to do development, you're pulling up pipes, you're disturbing water, you're disturbing the land, you're disturbing everybody's just coming and going and parking in your daily lives. So being somebody who has gone through building the sidewalks later, you're just delaying a bunch of problems for somebody else. So while my understanding is that you're going to put the money aside now and then plan for the sidewalks later, I believe that is a positive thing where I have lots of family here in the Tri-Cities where my own father had a nice land, it was rural, nice home, but no sidewalks. So then when he went on walks or whatnot, then I was afraid that that guy was going to die by getting hit by a vehicle. There's no room for kids to play. So let's just get it out of the way. When we're trying to develop things later, you're just delaying what can be fixed now and putting it to the side. So I think preparing for the future is better than just saving your problems for the future. That's my kind of point on that.
No, perfect, Ms. Wade. Thanks for the comments, and thanks for the comments from everybody. Again, this is something former councils didn't even allow comments during their workshops, and so I think this is excellent to be able to engage and listen to the public in this way. So with that, let's go back to council. Any further thoughts? Councilmember Perales.
Yeah, I'd be in favor of the right-of-way dedication and then the LID practice and no protests for the future. I think those are two prudent alternatives to my just blanket waiver. So
Perfect. Thank you, Councilmember Perales. Anybody else? Yeah, this is where staff's looking for direction from us, so we need to provide that. Councilmember Figueroa.
Yeah, I think that as I'm hearing comments and also some of the comments made from fellow council members, one of the thoughts that I have is just because we might not see something in our lifetime doesn't mean that we should neglect preparing for it. I think a lot of us can agree that we've inherited a lot of problems from previous councils that probably said the same thing when they were sitting in DC saying, oh, we probably will never see this in our lifetime and we'll let somebody else deal with it. And I think that for me, it is a responsibility and obligation to make sure that the next councils or the next generation is left better in a better standing than how we found something. And if we have the ability to plan for it, I think that we should. It is good stewardship as I understand it to be. So, yeah, I would not be in favor of the full exemption. But at the end of the day, so I would definitely be in favor of the right-of-way dedication, which should be, you know, a non-negotiable. But as we're planning for these improvements and later on, where is that money going to come from? Who's going to be responsible for that? That would be my question for us to kind of begin to think about, because we know how we're dealing with some of those financial strains. And that leads with a lot of how we're seeing a lot of decisions this year, with it being a budget year and all that stuff. So, yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else want to give? Thank you, Councilmember Campos.
Yeah, the alternative number 2 was the one that kind of stood out to me even prior to this meeting. I just think it just makes sense to making sure that we are accommodating our future, making sure that we're setting up a way to where our utilities and our infrastructure will still be there in the future. And so I approve or would vote for the alternative number 2.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Milne.
I guess I'm going for alternative. I don't know why I can't say that. Alternative number 2 as well. Right away definitely makes sense. Again, depending on where the property is, I mean, there should be sidewalks, but again, in some areas, well, like Councilman Prowse was saying, it would seem idiotic to have sidewalks in the middle of nowhere when everybody else on the road doesn't have it. So alternative 2, I guess, is what I'm leaning towards.
Thank you. And Councilmember Cotta.
I agree. Number 2.
Okay. Councilmember Hernandez.
It seems logical, but I think we need more discussion on it too, and probably compromise and all that.
Okay, thank you. So it sounds like, Ms. Sigdell, we are leaning, and Ms. Mattson, towards number 2, but I, for one, it sounds like I heard a few other staff members, if the lid can be explored, the LED, to see if there is a way that, you know, that cost could be paid for by the landowners in the future, I think is definitely worth investigating.
Yes, so I think we've done enough of the LIDs that we can speak fairly confidently in its process itself. There is usually something that happens. Sometimes it's just one homeowner who is very interested and persuasive, especially on cases like this. And there's a desire and a petition for the city to create an LID, and then the property owners, based on myriad of things, vote. And if it is 60% of the votes, it passes, or maybe 50. 60.
Less opposition than 40%.
Okay.
It's based on protests.
So if there's not if more than 40% protest, then it does not pass. So it's less of a vote. It's the opposite of vote, I guess.
Thank you. Would we be able to write a contract just to where they could not protest it?
I do not believe that we have a reason to write that contract right now.
Okay.
So it would have to be, as those cases come,
Okay.
that it just goes through the process of the LID. There is really not a reason or a legal tool for the city to go in and ask for all of the property owners within RS20 to sign a no protest LID.
Well, not all and if I misspoke there, I apologize, but just the ones that would be exempt of the development, my mistake.
Yes, we can definitely explore that.
Okay.
I see
Yes,
where you're
please.
getting.
Sorry
yes.
about that.
No, I understand you now.
Okay.
Yes, we can look into that.
Thank you. All right. Do you guys have enough direction for now, or are we good to move on? All right. I know there's not a lot of topics on our agenda tonight, but these are all heavy topics for a great discussion. Let's move on to letter B, 2026 Pavement Preservation Plan, and we're going to Director Sarah. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. For this item, I'm actually going to introduce Mary Heather Ames, Deputy Public Works Director, and she will guide you through our presentation and answer questions. Thank you.
There we go. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. As Maria said, my name is Mary Heather Ames, and I'm your Deputy Public Works Director. I'm here to talk about pavement preservation. Pavement preservation is a process by which we extend the lifespan of our roads. This process reduces potholes and surface defects, which in turn affects our safety. It affects the ride quality that we experience driving on the roads, and in turn then our travel experience within Pasco. It also helps us avoid more costly repairs later. Pavement preservation is guided by Pavement Condition Index. It's also referred to as PCI, I might say that. The condition of a road, of the pavement, is measured on a scale from 0 to 100. 100 being a brand new pavement. Then any deterioration subtracts from that 100 and brings us down. And the things that can bring it down are cracking, potholes, surface roughness. In pavement, we often say that water is the enemy. Those cracks are a way for water to get into the pavement. Then tires rolling across push the water in and can actually start breaking apart the pavement. So what we're going to be talking about is ways to combat that. In the city of Pasco, our current overall PCI is 77, which indicates a fair condition. This was done in 2024. We've been doing this about 3 years, the last couple times. The arterials and collectors are lower, they're around 70, and this makes sense because they are a higher number of vehicles, a higher volume on the road. Residential streets being at 80, and this also makes sense because fewer vehicles on the road, lower volume streets. Also generally newer. We have quite a bit of development that has added to our residential streets and not as many of the larger arterials and collectors added to our streets. As these roads age, we're likely to end up seeing that a bunch of roads need a lot of work at the same time, and this helps us see the need for proactive maintenance. This graph here, the details don't matter. What I really want to show you is the shape. So there's a orange line that's pretty much level and sort of drops off in the future. This is pavement condition over time, and this shows approximately 5 years. And that orange line at the top that stays level, it keeps our roads at the condition that they are for the longest amount of time, represents around $8 million per year of investment. We know that's not what we're doing, so you can compare to the gray line at the bottom, which represents not doing anything, and then our roads deteriorate pretty rapidly. The yellow is working with an annual budget around $700,000, I believe, and we are going to be able to spend a little more than that this year. So it gives you an idea that what we're doing is extending the life of the pavement by keeping that condition as good as we can with the amount of money that we have. Now, pavement preservation methods, there are quite a few. The ones that we are able to do with staff and resources are crack seal and chip seal. So remember how I said water is our enemy? Crack seal fills those cracks and keeps water from entering the pavement. It slows the deterioration in that manner, holds everything together. It's often done on its own, or it can be done as preparation for chip seal. And chip seal is where we apply, you can see in the photo on the right, just spraying a layer of liquid asphalt and then spreading aggregate on top. And that protects the pavement surface. It also improves traction and thereby extends the life of a road. when we were looking at where to apply these methods, these are the ones that we are able to do. We took data from the two previous pavement ratings that I mentioned, one in 2021 and one in 2024. Looked at them, analyzed where things are going, and at what point the best investment of our money is. We are limited in doing the chip seal. We do it on lower volume roads, maybe some collectors, but not necessarily those multi-lane arterials. Those will be done by other types of crews than our own city forces. So we're looking mostly at lower volume collectors, residential roads for the work that we do. So in 2026, the plan for crack seal includes this area shaded. This is in just north of Lewis, bounded by 20th and 17th. This area is prime for crack seal in that whole area, and it's a nice. So what I should say is when we did this analysis and we came up with all these different places that need work, and there's plenty of places, right? But if we took just the first one and the second one and the third one, we'd be hopping and skipping around the city. So we were able to group some together and be able to get really the most benefit for the amount of money that we have. So that's this one area in particular. And then we've identified some streets: Court Street, First Avenue, Harris Road, Railroad Avenue, Wernet, and Sylvester that are more like longer stretch that we can really use the money to the best benefit. And some of these, as I mentioned earlier, in this crack seal plan then will also be in the chip seal plan. That includes Harris, Railroad, and Wernet. We're also looking at Frontier Loop and First Avenue for the chip seal. And if you're curious about how long this takes or the timeline, what we're planning, crack seal needs to be done first, and if we're going to do chip seal, it's nice to have as much time between them as possible. In some places they do crack seal 1 year and chip seal the next year. For us, we're going to be doing crack seal as early as possible in the season, and then leaving chip seal for later. That really beautiful fall weather is a great time to be doing chip seal. So I believe that is the sum of my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions from council? Councilmember Campos.
Yeah, when you say that it extends the pavement lifespan, what are we talking about? How many years or whatever?
Yeah, thank you. That is a great question. So the life of pavement, it depends on the treatment that we're giving. Roughly 7 years for chip seal is the sort of the rule of thumb that we use. It also depends on the condition that it's in currently. So the curve dropping off, it goes slowly at first and then it goes really quickly. So we're trying to catch it before it drops off, and then it does go a little faster the next time. So if we've already maintained the pavement a couple times, it may be more like 5 years that we're getting instead of that full 7 years. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Perales.
Thank you, Mayor. So when you guys go out and do this PCI, it's strictly visual, just a visual inspection, or?
I wasn't here for them. We often do visual inspection. There are computer methods as well.
Yes, so it is we typically hire it out, and it's a vehicle equipped with cameras, and they're processing the information and identifying the type of cracking, the amount, the width of those cracks. So it's all processed through a software, and we had 2 different vendors do it, but the results were pretty similar. So they were they talked to each other, so to speak. They were consistent, and ultimately it lands with, for each road that you had scanned, which was all of them, in segments, it identifies a type of PCI, and it really breaks those segments if there is a drastic change in quality of that road. It triggers that, this should be broken into 2 instead of averaging it.
So when is that done? Because I went into some research, and I remember a presentation from 5 years ago, and you guys the city contracted with Infrastructure Management Services. So that's obviously one of the vendors. Have they done that scan recently? Was that done like the last year or two?
So we did one in 2021, which was IMS, and the most recent one was done at the end of 2024, with results in the early 2025.
Who was that vendor?
And that was Transmap.
Transmap Corporation.
Yeah, I was just kind of wondering, because when I looked at that last study done in 2021, it said that if we only spent about $1 million, that our final PCI would be 68 and a backlog of 6%. So I was like, man, how do we have 77 PCI? But I guess we're just building so many new subdivisions. It's really just boosting that PCI.
Yes.
That is true.
Do we have a backlog?
We could spend, as I mentioned, we could spend $3 million or $8 million a year. It would be roughly in the it was 3.6, I think. Yeah, go for it.
Yes. So it's divided between arterials and residential streets, and for arterials and collectors, it was like the bigger number, 4.7, something like that, and the rest was on residential.
Okay.
So it was divided, but ultimately it's very similar to that $8 million that was listed in the previous study that required that continuous help to support that maintaining those PCIs stable, kind of onward.
And then what would be the PCI if we spent $8 million?
It would stay the current 77 average
wow.
with 80 and 70, theoretically.
Okay. That's all the questions I had. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Connor.
Yeah, I think I'm just considering all the same concepts here. I'm just trying to digest the information. So 8 million is the sustainable number we would spend per year if we wanted to keep our roads from deteriorating. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okay. Well then, I mean, it just kind of seems like a slow death to only spend, less than $1 million on it per year, and then be in a conundrum at some point where we're going to spend a ton of money on reclaiming these roads.
And to your point, go ahead, Ms. Ames.
I would just say that we are not alone in this situation. I've worked in other jurisdictions. I know WashDOT recently did a presentation about this topic. It's something that, transportation funding is needed across the state and here in Pasco.
So, is there an established score that says when we get to this level, we need a new road?
Yes.
How are we doing there?
We certainly have roads that are beneath that, and that's where we need to think about overlay more, or like grind, dig up the base, build a new road, basically. And there are places within our jurisdiction that are more needed. So this picture, I didn't call it out, but this picture does reflect the most recent data, and some of those red ones are places where they would be candidates for a more substantial amount of work.
Okay. Well, we're trying to figure out, our budget crunch this year, but maybe if we could just put together a plan to just get back to a sustainable level so that we're putting the amount of money into these roads that we need to get out of them, so that we're on a cycle annually, where we're not trying to figure out, the minimalistic thing to do. I think that's where we need to get.
No, I agree. And I was just going to add, Director Sarah gave me a sober reminder, maybe it was the deputy city manager one day, that we built all of those roads along the Road 68 corridor. All that basically was developed and paved at one time. And so, yeah, that's really going to be a massive hit when we start having to put money into those to maintain them. Something to think about, like, to your point.
And if that's the case, maybe we don't need to, maybe the need doesn't demand that we recreate roads now, but at least if we're saving money to get to that point when it's time, we can do it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you.
I'd just like to add a little bit more.
Go ahead, Councilmember.
And this is just also, as I'm kind of processing the information, this is with The work crews that we've had that hasn't increased since was like 2022, right, or something like that.
2013,
Or, yeah.
I believe. Yeah.
And we've increased or doubled even that our miles in the streets, correct? Okay, so I just want to kind of bring that forward.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Ames, I think you're off the hook. We'll open it up to the council chamber here. Would anybody in the chamber like to speak for or against this or in any way related to our pavement preservation? Going once, going twice. All right, we will move on. Thank you, Ms. Ames, for the presentation. Let's go on to C, Court Street Traffic Calming Passive Measures Performance. And we're right back to you, Director Sarah.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. This item is an item that we have discussed in various occasions before, and this is an update after the 6 months of implementing passive measures as recommended in the second opinion from the traffic engineer performed in late 2024. All right, so as I mentioned, we've discussed this a variety of times, bringing forward the results of study first. And actually, I'll move on to the next slide, where in 2024, there were meetings with the community members. It was a neighborhood meeting. We understood the issues and concerns they were experiencing. And so a study was done. And the results of that study was brought forward. The results did not recommend implementing changes to the speed. There were some smaller changes to crosswalks at that time proposed and some striping changes. Some of the proposed changes were not found to be amenable to our community, so the council requested a second opinion study be done, like you would do with a medical diagnosis. So we did so. We hired another traffic engineer that was well-versed in traffic calming and implementing traffic calming measures in the western side of the state. And that second opinion result was presented in early 2025. This report did recommend changes to speed and then some passive traffic calming measures with a revisit at the 6 months for effectiveness and potential implementation of active traffic measures. Traffic calming measures. All right, so 2025, we talked about 2026. Here we are. We have the results of the reevaluation at the 6 months by the same engineer that did the second opinion study. All right, and so taking you back to 2024, when the second opinion was issued, there was lots of evaluation about how the first study was done, whether it was correct or incorrect, what made the recommendation be changed. And then some contextual information that led to the recommendation of the lowering the speed and considering other traffic calming measures to be implemented. So at that time, and you're seeing these are the slides from that early 2025 presentation, the issuance of the recommendation was 2024. There were proposals here for buffering the bike lane, which is part of a regional pathway or pathway system that connects with the other cities. So instead of having that bike lane be just divided by a single line, it now had a buffer, so space between vehicles and the bicycles and the pedestrians. Along with that, the speed was recommended to be reduced to 25 miles per hour, which was implemented. And speed feedback signs were installed in the vicinity of the crosswalks. That, again, those are trail crosswalks, part of that regional system. So all those improvements were implemented throughout 2025, with the latest implementation being in the summer of 2025. The 6 months of that implementation was in January of this year, when we took new data to identify whether those passive improvements have been effective or not. Okay, and these were the improvements that we had done, so I explained those. I'm going to move on to the next slide. And during that time, there was patrol in the area. There was either triggered by call-outs or just additional patrol implemented by the chief at the time. We noticed lots of patrol, some stops, lots of warnings, and some citations issued. And again, when we look at speed in the before and the after, we are seeing little effectiveness in the changing of behavior of drivers. You can see that the speeds are somewhat consistent in the before and after in the different locations. And of course, the speed limit had changed between one and the other. So that means that really drivers are not obeying the 25 mile per hour speed. Okay, we're seeing speeds that go somewhere between 24 and 34, pretty much across the whole corridor right there, with some areas predominantly in the low 30s. Okay, so as I mentioned, we took new traffic data consistent with the prior data in early 2026. That was the 6 months to evaluate effectiveness. And the recommendations from the traffic engineer is to move ahead with the active measures, and that is installation of speed cushions. The recommendation, and we'll see a drawing just one slide after, is 10 sets of speed cushions placed between the I-182 corridor all the way to Road 100. Those go accompanied with signage that warns of a bump existing ahead, and also some striping on the road that also warns drivers. We have done a cost estimate to perform this work with our own forces. We anticipated costing between materials, labor, and equipment about $70,000 for the implementation of those measures. And then the report does include a provision for additional signs to be placed right next to those humps if we notice that drivers are veering off of the lane, the vehicular lane, and encroaching into that bike lane that is not divided, right? There is space, there is some couple of feet of space, there's 2 lines, people should not be crossing those. But if the vehicles are veering and then putting those pedestrians and bicyclists at risk, then we should install a physical barrier, and a sign is a great way to accomplish that. So for adding those signs, we anticipate about $12,000 needed. It's much smaller, less materials that are needed, less staff. We'll come back to talk about how to fund these activities, but let me go ahead and show you what is the proposal from the traffic engineer. His recommendation is to follow the City of Vancouver standards, which is where he worked for a long part of his career, has a lot of experience there implementing this type of measures. And we have a couple of pictures of what that looks like with the bump ahead, or even with the installation of this striping, as you can see there, where there is a very similar condition to Court Street, where there is a bike lane, it's divided with no separators, it's just a line, and then there is a speed hump there that prevents. They're technically cushions, and they're called cushions because they're not really a bump like in a parking lot. It's divided at a certain width so that fire trucks can straddle that bump, but the rest of the vehicles do not. And we did actually specifically ask about ambulances, and are those able to straddle? And we heard no, they're not. So our understanding is that in other locations where this has been implemented, it just reduces the speed, and ambulances comply with that lower speed when they're responding to emergencies. And it has not been an obstacle. We have confirmed that. All right, so in this picture, and I know it doesn't look as bright in this screen as it looked in my screen earlier, but you are seeing the locations in pink of all the proposed sets of speed cushions. And as I mentioned, they're extending from just west of I-182 all the way to Road 100, and actually past Road 100 to where the crossing for the trail is, which is close to Road 96. All right. And so tonight, we are presenting this to you. This was requested by you all to be brought forward. We had to move the dates to make sure that all of you were present. And before I go into the three things that I need your heads nodding on, I want to make sure that I explain clearly the funding and what are our options to be able to fund this work. So as we heard in our previous presentation, our streets fund is a very tight fund with lower revenues. We subsidize some of that with our overlay work and the pavement preservation work that we're doing, which is paid from overlay. And so as we are looking at how to fit the $70,000 cost in this, as you all know, we have a transportation improvement program that plans for a program that is traffic calming, but that program was not funded in this biennium just based on revenues. So we look at different alternatives, and there's a variety. There's 6 of them. 3 of them seem more attainable than the next 3, but I will read you all of those so that you have ideas of what are the proposals. The first option, and this is in your first page of this item, is eliminating the sidewalk maintenance program for this year. We've had it for last year. We would eliminate it for this year, and along with that, we would have to reduce the pavement marking maintenance by 15%. So as one item is eliminated, it's about $54,000 worth of work in the sidewalk maintenance program, and the pavement marking is a much bigger program. So 15, with those two together, we can free up $70,000 to implement this work. We can, option number 2 is reduce the signal maintenance supply. So we buy equipment to be in stock so that we can respond to signal failures, signal getting hit, signals damaging. And so maybe eliminating a portion of that by 45% for this year. So still there is fund. We're not defunding that line. We are taking 45% of it, reallocating it to this work, along with 23% of sign maintenance, and that seems also quite fitting. Sign maintenance and sign construction and installation kind of go hand in hand, so that would be maybe a good fit. The other option, we just talked about pavement preservation, would be to reduce our pavement preservation activities by 9%. That is a small reduction, 9% of that program. So either one of those, 1, 2, or 3, fully fund the $70,000, and I think those are all within your streets fund, so it's a somewhat easier reallocation. Other options we have thought of, one is utilizing reserves from the general fund, which I know has been discussed before for other things, so that may be an option. Option number 5 is scheduling the improvements in 2027, and so reallocating funds or planning to allocate funds kind of like at the beginning of the biennium to be able to do this. This option and the next one both delay implementation, so for that reason we're not recommending them, but we thought we would at least post them for your consideration. And then number 6, as I said, this one would also delay implementation, could be creating something like a special assessment district or an LID to be able to fund these improvements. It seems the dollar amount and the level of administrative work maybe is counterintuitive in this case. And also delay, because there is a whole process that needs to go through. So those last 2 maybe have some bigger drawbacks than maybe the first 4. So again, hopefully I provided enough options for you to choose from. And so now looking at the direction, like the first thing that I would like to have your nodding of heads is, you want us to go ahead and implement the improvements as recommended, and if so, we have written in our report, we will be ordering the materials and installing the improvements as soon as those become available. We think that if we put orders now, we'll likely be able to receive them in June and then just prioritize this work. The second question is basically electing one alternative for funding reallocation where you can choose either one of these or maybe a new idea that we can explore. again, 1, 2, and 3 is moving dollars within your streets fund. 4 is general fund funding it, and 5 and 6 had some additional drawbacks. So I'm not going to repeat myself too much, but please ask if you need me to repeat. And then finally is, in order to implement the improvements at this time and to be expeditious, since it's been a long wait for the residents, I would say we plan to do a simple outreach with letters to each resident along the corridor within the limits of the work that is happening. If you feel that is sufficient and we don't need to do open houses and other work, that will help us move this as fast as possible, if you feel that limited outreach is sufficient at this time. Okay, so 3 questions, hoping to see your guidance on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Sarah. Appreciate all that. Mayor Pro Tem Milne.
Well, yeah, so as I actually live right there where this would happen, I have seen, again, in the last 20 years that I've been on the street, obviously more and more speeding, more development, more heavy infill, understand all that, but it does affect your way of life. I used to take my dogs for a walk on Court Street. Now I don't, because even last year came within a foot and a half of somebody nailing me because it's night. There's not a lot of lights and people do fly. I know the thing, I think it was in December when they did the analysis, some of the stuff, but there's different times of the year where you see a lot more heavy traffic, spring, summer, fall versus in December. So I would hope that all the council would be amenable to this. Again, $70,000. I know it's a lot of money when we're talking budget, but what is somebody's life of a kid? And then again, you got to also put into perspective the Sacagawea Trail is right there. I don't know how many times I've seen tons of bicyclists, people jogging. They do use that for other events. So, I mean, if it was a different part of the city, I think maybe not as many would be needed. But considering how many people at the different events actually walk up and down the street, I believe the 800 yards, the whole 10, is sufficient. What's that?
800 feet.
800 feet, yeah. So, that's what I thought I said. But 800 feet, I believe the analysis is correct on this. So 800 feet, 10 of them. My only thing is maybe the one sign, this feedback sign, should be moved. I know the one that we have heading west seems correct, but the one heading east does seem to be out of my perspective, doesn't seem to be in the right spot. But that taken aside, I again hope that the council would be for this. It's only a matter of time before somebody gets hit with the kind of speeds, especially with the different pro-made developments happening, like Mr. Reed was talking about. That one, I mean, 500 is 1,000 cars, and then again, so I mean, we do want to see people being safe. And to wrap this up, I'm obviously for this, and I would say implement number 4 out of the general fund. I mean, we spend millions of dollars on other projects, whether we're buying land to do, for the water reuse facility, not saying there's anything negative about that, but we do spend a lot of money on other stuff. $70,000 in my book is a small chump change compared to what we do spend on other aspects. And what was the third question?
Outreach.
Oh, the outreach. I believe we've done a great job on outreach. I mean, to me, letters. I believe the whole neighborhood is totally on board with this. I can't imagine somebody not wanting people to slow down. So I just hope that we could get this expedited and hopefully have it in sometime this summer. So again, I would ask my fellow council members, since this has been going on for years, the previous council was also for this, just because of, again, the amount of traffic that is happening, especially the racing. I think it would pretty much eliminate most racing aspects. And again, I hope that this would get done.
Thank you. Councilmember Cotter.
Yeah, I'm just going to reiterate some of the things that David said. Full support of the project as written. I think 800 feet is the appropriate distance between the cushions. And so forward there. I'm less opinionated about where this money comes from. I am interested in out of these first 3 options. Is there an opinion about what is going to create less ramifications or less consequences later on?
I believe they're all hard options, unfortunately. I would argue that pavement preservation is, as we've seen, absolutely critical, and we're already at a deficit of investment in it.
Right.
And so maybe that one has the biggest
Less
long-term
appeal.
impact,
Mhm.
even though it's a small percentage that is being removed.
That's good.
I think
that-
between 1 and 2, it's quite similar. I mean, you are taking some payment marking dollars, which you're implementing in payment marking, so that's a nice fit, and that's a complementary to number 1, right? And number 2, the one that complements the big chunk is sign maintenance. So again, you're using sign dollars to be installing signs along with other devices. So I think it's between those two. Maybe a clarification on sidewalk maintenance. So the city maintains sidewalks only on residential areas where there is an arterial street. So for example, Sandifer and Road 84, right, where there are neighborhoods, but those sidewalks are like the backside of the neighborhood and you're in an arterial. So the work that this program does is identify an area where there are maybe roots from trees in that area where we are maintaining it ourselves, not where it's a responsibility of the property owner or the business that owns the adjacent parcel. So these are specific locations. There's only a handful of corridors where this is used. And in those cases, we identify what is causing the sidewalks to buckle, and then there is coordination between parks and public works, and we take care of trees, and then we rebuild the sidewalks to prevent hazards, right, for tripping hazards specifically. What would happen if we were to eliminate the program for 1 year, like just take those dollars this year and implement them somewhere else? Ultimately, if this work is for safety of pedestrians, so somewhat purpose is similar. You won't be able to eliminate those hazards for pedestrians in other locations. Then what we would do is just mark them maybe with something that is visible, so that whoever is walking there is not inadvertently tripping, right? It's like can see that there is a tripping hazard there. We just won't be able to maintain that. And of course, the program would be reestablished the following year. So provided that there is what happens during the budgeting process. Mm-hmm. So 1 or 2 seem like options that have some relative ties to the work that we're doing, even though it's a little bit different. But I think that kind of works within that.
I'm not opposed to it's a one-time charge, at least at this point, coming from the general fund. I'm not opposed to that, but it would be nice, I think, if we could at least supplement it from reducing some of these other projects. Maybe even we split the difference or something like that. I assume when you're talking about the sign supply maintenance, some of that is, well, maybe there aren't as many signs that deteriorate this year, or it kind of comes to what we actually see. And so maybe if we're going to be really nitpicky with it, that's where we'd pull from the general fund if we saw a real problem with signage or something like that. But I'm fine for really either one of those. So yes, forward on the project. And then as far as if we need more more outreach, I don't think so. As loud as the constituents have been on this issue, I think it's all settled for them.
Thank you, Councilmember Perales.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to start off on some of the data in the report here. 2 citations issued, 10 warnings, 7 citations issued, and 38 warnings. I think we got to jack those numbers up with the citations. I think we need to start writing more tickets, because those are just 2 little snapshots, especially with a lot of the complaints we get from that area. I understand education, but there comes a time where obviously education is not really working. So I think we need to have a discussion about, I'm not talking about quotas, but I think we need to start seeing those numbers go up quite a bit, especially in our problem areas. I did have some issues with the traffic count study. We did a 3-day pneumatic road tube count, and then we backfilled the rest with GPS telemetry data. Is that a sound way to go about a study, with just doing one phase of a 3-day pneumatic road tube count and then doing the rest with GPS data?
Yes, that's pretty typical. 3 days of traffic data is pretty typical. You avoid long weekends and you try to do it, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which is where you see the most average type of use for the road. That is pretty standard.
Well, I mean, we did it in like late January, it said. I mean, we waited 6 months. We're talking about it now. Probably could have did it like sometime in March where it's nicer and people are out riding their bikes and stuff like that, right? People start coming out and they're racing down the street. I would like to see more data to kind of see, because I maybe those 85th percentile information is probably going to be a little drastically different. That would just be my recommendation. The more, and that to me, that from what I researched, that industry standard is doing that, 3 days pneumatic road tube counts, but over multiple times, not just once. But that would be my suggestion. And then another thing I wanted to bring up was Councilman Mayor Pro Tem Milne brought it up in regards to the radar feedback signs. I know back a couple months ago, there was an email. I talked with the traffic engineer from Apex, and we talked about putting 2 additional radar feedback signs, but we wanted to wait for the study. And he was amenable to moving the ones we have or putting 2 more in halfway between the other ones. So, I mean, that is more cost. How much what would be the cost for 2 more radar feedback signs?
I believe the installation last year was in the order of 27,000 for those 2.
Okay, so it would be another 27,000 roughly.
Something
Okay.
like that.
So my suggestion would be to put those in there, but I will defer to the individuals who live there if they want to fight for those 2 additional ones, or perhaps move the ones to more appropriate spots. I would be obviously I'm in favor of this. I'm in favor of speed cushions, anything, any traffic calming measure in our problem areas. Doesn't matter where it comes from. I would just make it easier. Just come from the general reserve, and then go out and talk to people, let individuals in that neighborhood know what's going on. So those are my points that I was going to make. Thank you.
Could I get a clarification? Was number 3 the outreach, doing additional outreach beyond letters? So instead of letters, just talking to people? Is that?
I think the outreach, what we're doing is sufficient. I mean, the news has already ran with it. I already had people start calling me from my district. When am I going to get speed cushions on my street? So it's obviously out there. I think this is something that a lot of neighborhoods are going to be reaching out to council members, because we do have brickyards almost everywhere across our city. And so we need to start rectifying this issue. So no, I think continue on with the outreach you guys are doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Cotta. Before I go back to you, Councilman Figueroa.
Yeah, I just had a question of, do we know how this is going to impact the flow of traffic? Is it going to be drastic or not? I mean, 10 of these, again, I would defer to those council members who are from that area. I mean, I rarely frequent that area to begin with. But I know that it's an issue, so I'm not going to say that it's not an issue. But do we know how that would affect that, like especially during big hours where it's mainly used?
We had a conversation with the traffic engineer that prepared the report, and we asked that question, if there was a way to predict. And he said, well, using your model, it doesn't seem like, and this is the model that the MPO prepares, right? So that is BFCOG. And he said, we don't see that there's going to be a lot of change in the patterns. What you may experience is people that are using court today may choose to use another side road, kind of like a cut through, to avoid some of your speed cushions. And so the recommendation was to take traffic data before the installation of the cushions in all those side streets that kind of do, from 100, they go like this and then they go down. Take speed data there to confirm if you see change of flow, and you likely hear from your neighbors there that they're seeing a lot more traffic. Then you can have a set for comparison, right? So understand what your current flow is today to then address if you're having cut through, and likely the solution to cut through is more speed cushions installed in other locations, just to make it all equal and less attractive.
And if I try to finish off with my time too, so then I would proceed with the implementations. When it comes to the budget relocation, I think again we're in a tight spot this year, and we really, every penny, everything counts at this point. So whatever we got to do, I mean, I'd definitely be more in favor for option number 2. And this would just be for the remainder of the year, right? Reducing the signal supply maintenance and the sign maintenance. We just talked about the pavement and kind of where we're at, so I wouldn't want to reduce anything there. And also the reduced pavement markings as well. I know that there's a lot of sidewalks that are really out of shape, that we can't really see the lines anymore. I know that when I was at Orion High School, a lot of the students talked about their crosswalks. You can barely see them, and so that was a big issue of concern for them as well. And there are a lot of those in my district, so I think that's really important there. So that would be my suggestion. And when it comes to number 3, I mean, I think my fellow council members have said, I think it's a big issue in the area, and people know about it, and I think that they've done more than enough.
Thank you, Councilmember Campos. Then back to you, Councilmember Cotta.
Yeah, I'm all in favor of this. The reality is this is not the first attempt to try to fix it. Sounds like this has been ongoing. A lot of attempts have been, and so we're at a point to where this is just necessary. So I am in full with this. I think looking at it, I was going to say 2 as well, finding that fund to do that. And then just like with all my other focus, what you're saying is just the outreach has been really, really good. People who are living in the area have really engaged with each other, and they've been calling us, and so I think they're doing a fantastic job with this. So I think we're good with that.
Thank you, Councilmember Cotta.
Yeah, I just wanted to support Leo's point there about enforcement in that area. Obviously, it's a high pedestrian area, and so I think anytime there's an opportunity to enforce that, that's going to keep everybody safe. I don't know if that's an issue of just giving warnings instead of tickets, or if it's just bandwidth, because it's probably hard to get out to that distant area. But with the resources we have, the more enforcement, the better there.
Thank you, Councilmember Hernandez.
I'm also in favor of it. Also, are we just voting for the 70,000 and not the additional 12,000 for the bike lanes?
So if I can just speak to that, one of the points I was going to make is I would like to see the signs now. I mean, this has just been such a lingering problem for a while. To come back, if people are going to swerve, I have a feeling they're going to swerve.
Well, yeah,
I just say we spend the $12,000 now, put in the signs that say hump, eliminate that.
Yeah,
That was
because I'm not, I mean, it seems like we're just talking about.
Yep, and we have so far, and I appreciate
Okay.
you bringing that up, because yeah, that's the way I want to go.
Okay, so, yeah, I'm in favor of it as well, like Councilman Figueroa. I really don't go that area that much, but, I do hear about it. So I'm in favor of it, and also the option 2 as well. And the outreach that you're doing is fine, I believe, so. I'm in favor of it as well.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So, yeah, that was my one sentiment. Yeah, and the timing, I'd like to see it sooner than later, especially with the Aquatic Center. It was just announced by Public Works, or not Public Works, but so many different organizations. Mr. Watkins of the Public Utility District, or the Pasco, or why am I drawing a blank?
Pasco Facilities District.
Thank you. Yes, so now it's June 13th they're looking for. So yes, I would love to see it done by then. And as voiced by my fellow council members, I believe it was Councilmember Figueroa, about traffic flow, I do have concern about, are we just sending this to other roads, like where water is going to find the path of least resistance, And I think it's worth it for us to pay attention to what's happening in other neighborhoods. And to Councilmember Peralez's point, this is, in a way, is a great test area for us to see how this works and everything, and look at potentially implementing it in other parts of the city. I think would be really, really good. And just the last couple points I wrote, again, as I've said all along, I think this is worth the exception because of the Sacagawea Heritage Trail, the 26-mile trail that kind of circumnavigates the Tri-Cities, so to speak, at least along the river. And then I think Councilmember Peralez brought up some great points as far as, and I think Mayor Pro Tem did too, about the timing of the study in the winter versus the nicer weather. But I think if I remember right, that's when we kind of directed them to do it, just to kind of keep this process going. But yes, as far as the feedback signs, maybe potentially we buy some more down the road, but I think what we're hearing from some of the people was just they weren't maybe in the right spot to begin with. So if we could save some money and just move them to a more appropriate spot would be better. So yes, I would be adamantly for this. I say we spend the extra $12,000 now, put in the signs, let's just end it. It's just 12,000 more. And I appreciate the discussion, starting with you, Director Sarah, about we just can't print money here like the feds, that this has got to come from somewhere else. And I appreciate you being conscious and trying to, take it out of your own budget first, rather than just defaulting to the general fund that Councilmember Figueroa reminded us several times that, we've got to really figure this out this year. So I might actually, in just hearing the discussion, I like perhaps Councilmember Cotta's position of maybe splitting it. Maybe half of it comes out of, sign maintenance and other things like that, and maybe half of it does come out of reserves just to spread this around. So that's where I'm at on it. Mayor Pro Tem.
I would back you up on that as well. Yeah, maybe you do out of the, whether it be 82, and then maybe 41 coming from the department, whether it's options 2, it sounded like was what everybody was vying for, and then maybe the other 41 coming out of the general fund, and we just do the signs, do the speed bumps, and then see where all that goes, and then maybe down the line approach moving the one sign, or it wouldn't make sense to move it, have extra if we have all these speed bumps, because people can't only go 25 in the area. And I just want to make a comment, what Mark was talking about, that, you're going 25, you're not going to have to slow down. It's only if you're hitting the thing at, say, 30, 40, then you're going to get some air. So, if you don't do that. But, again, I can't imagine somebody going any faster than that with these speed bumps. So, it seems like more speed feedback signs wouldn't really be necessary in the middle if we implement the speed cushion. So, but I do believe the mayor is onto something on this. So thanks.
Director Sarah.
Yes, and to the location of the sign. So we did discuss, and I did see, I think Councilmember Perales had shared with me the exchange with the traffic engineer. So we discussed locations, and he explained that it was critical that the 2 signs that were there stay with where the crossings are, because we're trying to protect those crossings and create awareness, but additional ones could be installed if the city desired. He wasn't recommending them based on basically budget constraints. He was trying to be budget conscientious, but other than that, it's like, yes, if you want to add more, you certainly can. With the installation of the cushions, though, as you were saying, there may be limited benefit to them, as there is a clear, physical obstacle in the road. So maybe that is an opportunity to not spend more money.
Thank you. So just to finalize here, everybody good with Councilmember Cotta's idea of splitting the money, half general fund, half out of the sign maintenance fund, I think you said, and are we good with that? Are we good with the extra $12,000 for the hump signs to the side of the speed bump for now? Oh, sorry.
No, Mayor, I don't want to make this conversation longer or the decision harder, but as I'm hearing your conversations, what I would like to highlight is that street fund is poor. It's negative in its reserves at the end of this year. And that's a discussion that we've been having with Transportation Benefit District and the potential revenue that it might bring in. But outside of that, moving forward, the city is going to have to subsidize, and when I mean the city, the general fund is going to have to subsidize it pretty significantly for the coming years to even do the current actions that we do right now. So while it is great, and I did not change Director Sarah's recommendations because I do appreciate that approach, it might be just that you draw it down from general fund reserves, but as you're hearing from other neighborhoods on similar issues, it might be a program that you would want to add to your street or general fund on a regular yearly basis so that you can deal with different neighborhoods as those neighborhoods come. So that might be an approach that we want to take here, or you might want to just tackle this particular issue for now and discuss the future approaches during the budget time.
So just to clarify, in your opinion, Ms. Sigdell, that it doesn't matter whether it comes through the street fund or not, because the general fund's just gonna have to pay for it anyways.
At the end of the
Including
day.
that $25,000 sidewalk or crosswalk we'd love to have at the Leo Center and Tierra Vida for all of you. out there.
Exactly. The
Okay.
needs are many, the resources are few. So I do love the approach of where can we pinch, but as I think of the sidewalk, a sidewalk needs to be fixed regardless, whether it's this year or next year. And so we're not quite saving anything there. If there's a signal box that is destroyed, we are going to have to fix it.
Okay.
So they're not quite savings, we're just not doing it this year. You might as well pull in from reserves, especially if the goal is to have a program that tackles this issue neighborhood by neighborhood.
Okay. Councilmember Khanna.
Is this supplementation above and beyond the tax we created for the transportation district?
We've not created that tax yet. In fact, that's going to come to you for action early May,
Okay.
in May 5th, I believe.
But that is our plan for resolving the issue.
It's a proposal from staff, and yes, yeah,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
not implemented yet.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, so to clarify, general fund, the extra $12,000 signs, and yeah, I agree with everybody else. Good grief, outreach. Send them a letter that the traffic pillows are coming, and I think we're good. Okay, very good. Let's move on. Thank you. Oh, to the chamber. Yes, some people are here. Might want to discuss this. Thank you. Yes, so we will open it up for discussion. Thank you. 2 minutes, name and city or county of residence.
Dallas
please.
Green, Pasco, Washington. Thank you guys, but more importantly, I want to thank Director Sarah, who has tolerated our street for a number of years. I think we've been through 4 city managers, a couple public works directors. Richa has been very patient with us, but also Pasco PD. So I'm going to spare you a lot of my manifesto because I think we covered it tonight. But I did want to point a few things out just so everybody knows. Don't lose sight that the Sacagawea Trail runs on that portion of road. I mean, it's very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. There's kids out there, bikes, everything, every day. Don't lose sight when you look at median speed and 85th percentile. Look at the reports, and this is going to happen in other areas. It was regularly showed up every day, 45 to 65 miles an hour on that street. I originally listed out everything that was over 45, and I ran out of paper. It's a big problem. The report also shows number of violators, anyone over a threshold, which I believe Deputy Chief Cook is about 10 miles an hour over on a 25. It showed violators. And get ready, over 3 days, your system said 490 violators, at least 10 miles over. It's a big number. You could pay for a full-time police officer out there. But thank you. We look forward to it, and hopefully it gets happening.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Green. Anybody else for or against at this point? Yes, sir. Name and city or county of residence, please.
Pete Vorteport, also Pasco. I live on Court Street, right in the middle of the straight section that has most of the speed. And again, I want to applaud you for recognizing the safety implications, the speed on the street and the proximity of the pedestrians and the runners and the bicyclers that are traveling very close. So a little bit of a unique situation in Tri-Cities maybe. I also want to mention that I've got a lot of experience in another community where there's a tremendous amount of speed tables or speed cushions. And again, I want to reiterate that as long as you're within a reasonable speed, close to the speed limit, even 5 miles an hour over, let's say, not an issue whatsoever. Again, if assuming that the speed cushions would be properly designed for the speed, I assume they would be. It's really not an issue. No need to slow down from the speed limit down to, let's say, 15 miles an hour because you're going to go over a speed table or a speed cushion. Not necessary. One of the little kind of side benefit from a previous discussion was the pavement preservation. So I don't know if everybody knows, but on that section of Court Street, there's a load restriction, and it's just kind of a common thing that the quarries down the street, and I'm not saying they're the only heavy trucks that come from the quarry. There's other heavy trucks, but it's pretty much ignored that these trucks it's a shortcut or whatever for them to get from point A to point B from mostly from the rock quarry on Harris Road. And I think with these speed tables, maybe some of these vehicles will take the appropriate route that's Harris Road onto the highway or whatever, and maybe preserve that Court Street a little bit better. Cost savings. Thank you very much.
So before, I just want to give anybody an opportunity that wants to speak against this. Are you for or against, or not you? So just one more time in the audience, just for the sake of fairness and ample time, does anybody want to speak against this? Please proceed. Name and city or county of
My name is
residence.
Jerry Roach, and I live in the same area, have for 42 years. When I moved to our house, it was a farm across the street, alfalfa field. There's very little traffic out there. Now there is a lot more traffic. And, first I want to thank you guys for hearing us. Last time I spoke here, I don't like to speak in public. The last time I spoke here was when the pro-made home things was being heard. And the response was, we're not going to hear anything tonight because you should have been at some other meeting that none of us got notice for. And so we couldn't speak. And so I got up and said, as a guy that practiced law for many years and followed up with additional legal career, without notice, democracy is ineffective. So I appreciate your opening the door to us to speak, because that's actually your responsibility. Thank you. Appreciate it. But anyway, the amount of traffic that goes in front of my house now compared to when I moved there is substantial, and this is an important move and a good move. We've had in the past few years 3 dogs hit in front of our house or close to it, and we had a really serious accident a number of years ago where 2 cars hit head on right in front of our house. I was working in the lawn with my 3 kids, and a car hit right in front of us and spun a car around and ended up parked in a driveway across the street. It was amazing the way it ended up. And cars speed through there constantly. They need to be slowed down. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? We have room for one more.
Simpson, I'm at the end. I'm out by McKeever Park.
Yes, sir.
And I appreciate you hearing us on this. This restores my faith in City of Pasco that you guys are hearing it, and it's really something else. I appreciate it. Anyway, back to the one thing I'm not hearing is the crosswalks coming across off of the Sacagawea Trail. There's just 2 white lines. That's it, and a little yellow flashing light. That, as people have pointed out, it's really important for Tri-Cities to have a good showing on that Sacagawea Trail. It's a big business abuse booster here, so if somebody gets hit on there, it's going to affect a lot. So if we could really concentrate on that McKeever Park, I keep coming back to that. That's where this starts. Young men out there egging each other on, and you look at the burnout marks at that park. There's 2 of them tonight. I called twice this week on racing. So you guys hearing us on this, it's taken a while, but boy, this is really something else. Thank you so much for hearing us.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your comments. Okay, with that, let's move on. Letter D, how's council doing? It's been a couple hours. You guys want to push on, finish up? Perfect. Let's go. D, Targeted Urban Areas Tax Exemption Program. We're going to our Deputy City Manager, Ms. Sigdale.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We will be talking about Targeted Urban Area, or TUA. And I would like to first acknowledge some of our guests who have been patiently waiting and do deserve my apology. I should have put this item a little bit further in our agenda. We have John Rosenau, who is our county assessor from Franklin County, Stephen McFadden, Deputy Executive Director for Port of Pasco, and then especially big thanks to Mandy Wallner, who is Economic Development Manager for City of Richland, and who has lived experience with this program, and they're all here to answer any questions that you might have and help me through this presentation. With that, we'll be going through the program. Some of you have seen this presentation before. In fact, Mr. McFadden was here almost exactly 2 years ago presenting on the topic to council. Essentially, TUA is a program that Washington State introduced. It is a 10-year local property tax exemption for industrial or manufacturing facilities that are they're designated as urban areas. And the reason for this is to encourage new manufacturing, which Washington State falls behind on. And City of Richland was one of the first ones to implement, and they implemented in early 2023. So this is not just for any sort of industrial or manufacturing. You have to meet pretty strict criterias. It has to be within city limits, zoned industrial manufacturing, undeveloped or underutilized parcels, and if you have a boundary map on what these lands are, they need to be touching each other. So you cannot have islands throughout the city. The county can also adopt the same or overlapping boundaries by separate resolution, which Benton County has chosen to do so, partnering with City of Richland. The qualifications are it's a but-for. So without this, you would not be locating within Washington State, that you have to provide at least 25 jobs that are paying livable wages, which at this time is defined as $23 per hour or more. It's a new construction only, 10,000 square feet minimum, and at least $800,000 minimum in value. It is quite strict in what is exempted for property taxes, as in you might have office spaces within this manufacturing. Those office spaces would need to be included in property taxes, but the manufacturing space would not be. And that therein, while that's a good thing, creates more complexity in application of property taxes. So it's not just you look at the property, you evaluate it, you have to be a lot more intimately familiar with its operations, layout, and all of that. And we'll talk about that challenge here later in the presentation. As I went a little bit ahead of me, but it talks about the fact that what is exempt from taxation is new construction only, and that office manufacturing would be the only part that is included. It's exempt for 10 successive years, property taxes only, so that's the only taxes we can exempt, unless county also joins in. What we've found is it's easier for, it has been easier for Benton County's appraiser to implement this program if both the county and the city are in tandem together. What's not exempt is land value, non-manufacturing improvements, like I mentioned, offices, county property taxes, if Franklin County chooses not to implement a similar program, and any other state, local, school taxes, those kinds of things. There is a key importance here, as if you could not make property taxes in Washington State any more complicated. You include the construction and the property value till it's almost completed. And there's many other details to this. And then you take it off the property tax rolls. And when you do that for about 10 years, that property tax that would be paid by this entity is essentially paid by everybody else at the city. So it creates what you call a tax shift. And then after 10 years, it comes back in. Now, there's many reasons why you would want to do this. which is it creates good jobs. You're not just giving it out to everybody who's opening shop. There's strict criterias. Council can decide on who you approve this program, what kind of agencies you approve this program for. But there is an impact to people. It might be minute, it might not be perceivable at all, but there would be an impact to people because you first include them in your tax roll and then you exclude them. And so it creates a little bit of an impact for people. For manufacturers, it's a 10-year tax relief, which is pretty significant, even though it would be just for the city's property taxes. There's also a competitive advantage. There might be a reason why manufacturers are not coming to Washington State, and that's why this exists. And so I would say more so than a competitive advantage, we might be leveling the playing field. And it gives them certainty on what to expect in terms of property taxes for future. For Pasco as a community, it creates family wage jobs. It does bring in construction revenue, so it's a one-time sales taxes for construction, so that's a value. For city of, and I'm going to speak as a city of Pasco, exemption really only applies to new values. So if you really think about it, the but-for term, that they would not come to Washington State but for this exemption. So if they were not coming, then you're really not losing any revenue, essentially, right? Because they would not be here. You're still taxing the land. You're just not taxing what's being built on it, the manufacturing portion. And of course, future tax-based growth, that after 10 years, community is enjoying an employer that is paying livable wage, and that also helps with other economic development as well. The challenge that we have is software, which, you know, it's a tool, but it's a really critical tool, and it's a lot of work. So if it's just the city of Pasco that is going to implement this program, Franklin County might not want to implement this program, or their maps might look different. That creates a further challenge. But at this time, and I will let the assessor speak about his program himself if he chooses to, but they do not have a software that you click a button and it will just calculate that for you. So they would have to work with their software provider to make sure that this tool or this program can be worked within their tool and that it's accurate. They would also need a lot more man hours to make sure that they have right resources to designate what is office space, what is manufacturing space, how do you split that, and then the boundary alignment is another critical one. It would make things a little bit easier if both the Franklin County and the city had the same boundary. It might be harder if it's different boundaries. It might be even harder if, it might be even harder if it's different boundaries for Franklin County and the city of Pasco, or maybe a little bit easier if Franklin County just chooses not to implement this program. If we do establish the TUA, and I do not want to go too much into it, but Mandy has set the path for us, so we would do a lot of the copy and paste, but we'd go through application, kind of walking through these steps that are on the screen, and part of that is also council approval on what projects would be approved. And with that, our next steps is really to get your input. If you would like for staff to move forward, identify a TUA map, which we do have one prepared, that includes as much of our currently industrial land as possible that is touching each other, and coordinate with Franklin County to see if they're interested in this program and implementing it from a county's perspective, and adopt a resolution and go through those steps. With that, I'm going to stop right here and see if you have any questions for myself or our guests.
Thank you, Ms. Sigdo. Yeah, I was going to offer our guests, Mr. McFadden, Mr. Rosenau, and the gentlelady from Richland. What was your name again? Mandy, thank you so much for coming over and investing in this. Would you guys like to add to the conversation before we go on? You have a really important component about more work for you.
John
right?
Rosenau, County Assessor. I want to just clarify on the software and a little bit of what's going to happen. We've been already working with the software vendors on what might be possible. The issue is there's so many variables to this, massive amount of variables. Even if the county went identical boundaries or didn't go in at all, because either one of those two is easier than if they have a secondary boundary different than the cities. That would be very complex. But the complexity of it has to do with how much of that building is going to be manufacturing or administrative. The administrative side or office side is not tax exempt. How big is the land size? So it will require us to do more than just a software update, because a software company cannot build anything that can take into consideration all of those variations that could happen, and adapt it to all the counties that could have different variations within the state that uses the same software. So we have a workaround, but what it would require is we literally would have to do administrative segs on the property where it would have more than one parcel number, and we would have to create a special taxing district for those areas that would require the tax exemption. So it can be done, but it is a significant workaround on what has to be done. So you would see a different taxing district. You'll see two parcels where it couldn't be sold without them being combined, as one legal entity. And we've done similar things to that in the county. Darigold is that way because part of it was in a Fire District 3 bond, and part of it wasn't. And so until that bond ends, we had to segregate that and we have to assess it separately. And so there's a little more work to the office that way. But just wanted to explain that to you. It is doable, but it's complicated. Any questions you might have?
Yeah, one question I had, Mr. Rosenau, was, so is your guys' software different from Benton County? You guys use two different types of software?
Yeah, completely different software.
Okay. Software companies or whatever, vendors?
And even there, I'm not so sure how they're working around theirs with their software, because it isn't even, it isn't built to do it quite the way that we would like to see something anyway.
Would this be extra cost that you guys would have to absorb? Would it be something that the city?
I would ask the city to accommodate the county on that. However, the statute does not require the city to do so. Okay? So. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenau. I just want to ask one question. Workload. I know the county and the city, and other municipalities and counties are in the same boat here. And I know, the county commissioners are looking at saving money where they are. Talk to me about the workload, if you would, please.
It depends on the manufacturing item that comes in or industrial item, how large it is. If you had something the size of Darigold and value of Darigold that came in, even if it was on one or two parcels, very complex. It would be equivalent of at least a quarter of a person a year on something that big, at least for the first 3 years getting it implemented. Let's put it that way, because they've got up to 3 years to get it implemented, depending on how fast they put it in. If it's smaller, if it's an $800,000 or $900,000, we have homes bigger than that.
Yeah, perfect.
So that's that would be a couple of days' work.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
My other question was actually for Ms. Molnar.
I'm sorry.
It was for Ms. Molnar from St. Richland. Over in Richland, the only entity that's used the program has been ATI. so far, or has there been another manufacturer?
I have 4 manufacturers that have been approved for the program. One is pending application, and then I've had one complete their project. So ATI was the project that's been completed, and we've issued final certificates, so their exemption began the beginning of this year.
Okay,
So we've fully gone through the process and executed successfully on the plan.
okay. Has the workload been any different for those ones?
In all fairness, I can't speak for the county. Yes, I'm sure that they have. They handle it as creating a floating parcel within the parcel that they already have, attach that to the assessed value, and then have those work independently within that system. That was the software that they had, and I know we had a lot of meetings about it to make sure that it was all going to work. But we were happy to see that when it came time, everything was in place and it did work fine.
Okay, great. Thank you much.
Yeah, of course. A couple things while I have a
Oh,
second.
yes, please,
just
by all
to
means. Thank you.
Give you some input. So I did mention that we have the 4 projects, one of which is a $1 billion fertilizer company that I can say made the selection of Richland because we had this program, and so that is that but for. So while Richa is correct that it is does bring them to Washington, it also brings them to Tri-Cities. So I think it definitely helped us compete against our partners in Oregon, and so where we can definitely put ourselves on the map against Texas, Tennessee, North Carolina, Oregon. We did those assessments with TriDec, and so those analysis were completed on all those projects to be able to show that without this incentive, they would have not been able to make up the difference and located somewhere else. So that was the benefit there. And in our case, and in some cases where the port owns property, the benefit there is that the property is currently not even on the tax roll because it's publicly owned. So once it goes into private hands, you're gaining that land tax value that you weren't gaining before. So there is still a little bit of that realized income throughout the duration. And not to put pressure on anybody, but the project currently sunsets in 2030. So we would love to have partners that can go with us to the legislature and ask for an extension on such a great opportunity that we've worked really hard on. In addition to that, I want to thank our partners. Of course, it took a lot to get this here and be able to be successful at it. So we're certainly excited for that. One other thing that I would probably put on the disadvantage list that didn't get highlighted was that you can't pick and choose the applicants. So we did check in with Department of Revenue because my council, like any council, would want to be able to decide that this one gets it and that one doesn't because of valuation or whatever the reason. And that's unfortunately not allowed in this program. So if you choose to do it and they meet the parameters, they move forward. So that's probably something important to consider.
Thank you so much. And again, I really appreciate you taking the time to help us out and partner with us. Love that.
Happy to help.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. McFadden, thank you. And I just want to tell you also thank you. I mean, when I first heard you speak about this and trying to, build an aerospace industry out there at the port, I mean, that is just music to my ears. And this sounds like such a great match made that could perhaps entice some of those, aerospace manufacturers or others in the industry from the west side to come on over to the bright side. So thank you for your work also.
Thank you for that. It's a great, point that you make. Mandy listed off some states that are prime incentive-oriented states that incentivize manufacturers to locate in their states. Washington State Constitution is very prohibitive around incentivizing economic development. And so this is like one tool that's been on the books for a few years. Its timing when it was created was following Senator Benke's efforts to create the BEST program, which was established a goal to create 200,000 new manufacturing jobs in Washington State. And over that 4 or 5 year period of time, we're a long ways from hitting that goal. And what we bump into on a regular basis is Texas created a model in the state that will help any county buy ground and provide ground to land a major manufacturer. That's not available to us. Tennessee is noted for having acquired 3,000 of the 6,000 acres Ford needed to build its new Ford assembly plants that are based in Tennessee. So those are the kinds of things you're up to. And site selectors are going to look for the best deal for their manufacturing client in the United States. Even Darigold, 44 locations in 3 states they considered before they selected the Port of Pasco. When we came a couple of years ago, excuse me, not only do we have the proposal for creating an aerospace center, we also have the Ryman Industrial Center. We're recently acquired an additional 320 acres at the Ryman Industrial Center. And we're currently one of two entities in the state that are considered pilot projects for an industrial symbiosis center, which is a whole other presentation in and of itself in terms of what industrial symbiosis is. But for us to recruit the companies and land the companies here, we've been an advocate of this particular program. I'm amazed, quite frankly, that more cities in the state of Washington haven't taken advantage of this program. And it's a bit of work, and it is a process. And like Mandy said, you can have the award-winning Darigold project, or you can have a small $800,000 project come through the door. If you implement the program, you really cannot pick and choose and turn them away. On port ground, we seek companies that are bringing higher best use to the land that we own prior to us committing to do a land sale. So there are times that projects don't meet our threshold of our mission around economic development, and we take the higher bidder, so to speak, the one that's bringing more jobs and more private investment, which ultimately generates more property tax revenue. I think it's a good program. It can be complicated to launch. The thing that's most important to me is that if you do this and if you implement a map, you need to take in every bit of the city's industrially zoned ground possible. You may implement it this year, but you may want to take a look at your comprehensive plan when it's complete and been sent to the state, and look at all of your UGA area that may have industrial ground that's going to be future annexed into the city, and be prepared to modify your map down the road, because part of that ground is Port of Pasco ground at the Ryman that we've applied for inclusion in the city's UGA when the comp plan is complete. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Anybody from council have any further questions for our guests or Ms. Signell? Anybody? You guys good? Let's open it up to the chamber then.
Just have one.
Oh,
question.
sorry, go ahead,
As
Councilman
we're
Figueroa.
Thinking about this, I know that it says that it causes exemptions for a while, but it gets spread out to property owning. Is there like a rough draft estimate of how much that increase was? You know, dollar base or what that looked like?
Are you looking for exact Richland's experience or just overall what our experience?
Overall, and I mean, they have experience doing this, so why not get some numbers?
Unfortunately, that is the piece of paper that's sitting on my printer at the office. I can tell you it was significant, and what we found in working on the ATI project was our estimations were a little bit low. So I'm always conservative when it looks at what our estimation would be over time. So the new construction bump in the beginning obviously is significant. And then the third year of that bump gets held until year 11, and then that comes back on the rolls. And so the savings to the company, is that what you were?
So to the individual property owners, and they get spread around, how much of an increase do they see?
Oh, for the shift in tax. Yes. So that also is something that is kind of up to you in a way. So the way that Richland handles it is we actually offset what we take in property tax spread over our taxing jurisdiction in order to offset that shift. So there isn't one for our residents over that time. And I would love to get deeper into how that works. And I just am not, that is not my area of expertise. So I don't want to butcher it, but
So clarify a little bit on your question. I think that the city is at about $1.14 per thousand right now. So for every $1,000 of, well, you take the assessed value, divide it by 1,000, and then for every 1,000, they're going to save $1.14 per thousand off of theirs. Now that certainly would shift to the other taxpayers if they're not paying it, if you keep your budget. Now, as they were mentioning from Richland, they choose not to budget the full amount that they could, their highest lawful. What that does, though, is it shifts it to where it can be taken later. So it doesn't disappear, if you don't want it to disappear. And some council in the future can certainly take that. On an $800,000 project, I don't know that you can even, I mean, we calculate out to 9 decimal points, and believe me, it's going to be in there minimal, very, very minimal shift, but it would be a shift, okay, on it, on there. And the third year, like they're mentioning, if the company waits to do the majority of their new construction till the third year, then of course the city doesn't get any benefit of that, or the county if they put the same resolution in to have the same parameters. They wouldn't get any of that till after 10 years. Otherwise, the first couple of years you're gonna see that. So hope that kind of answered a little bit. Okay.
You good? Thank you. Let's open it up to the chamber. If anybody in the council chambers would like to speak on this issue for or against, we would take those comments now. Going once, going twice, 3 times. Ms. Sigdell, what kind of direction are you looking for us or from us on this topic tonight?
We're looking for council's interest on the program. If we get direction from majority of the council to move forward, we will bring you the concrete legal steps and the tour map and start working with our partners in earnest to implement the program.
Thank you, Ms. Sigdell. Councilmember Perales.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, no, this has been 720 days in the making. I also went and looked the first time we talked about this. So, no, I think the time is now. We need to have some economic development tools in our toolbox here. So I think everyone should be in favor of this, and we can bring in the White Shoe Law Firm to help us out along the way and figure things out, partner with the county, communicate intently with them and figure out the workaround and hopefully start bringing some manufacturing back to the city of Pasco. So.
Thank you. Councilmember Cotter.
Yeah, I'd also support the idea. There's just a lot of fascinating testimony. It just seems like a really great opportunity for the city.
Thank you. Anybody else? More direction for staff? Got enough that want to go forward for this? That's 2.
Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes. All for it as well.
Sorry.
Seems like a no-brainer. So yeah, let's move forward with it if we can.
Thank you. Councilmember Hernandez.
Yes, it sounds like a good idea and good opportunity, so yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Figueroa.
Yeah, I'll speak in favor. Seems that some of the pros definitely outweigh the cons in this, and that's one of the things that I always think about when making a decision. I mean, every action has an opposite and equal reaction, and so that to me. But I mean, when we're talking about tools for economic development, I think that we should definitely kind of think about doing that. I know that Councilmember Perales always talked about us being kind of behind and trying to catch up, and I think this would definitely kind of put us in the contending force at the national stage of being a place to do business with, and so I would definitely be in favor of that.
Awesome. Thank you. Sounds like that's pretty much a consensus. With that, let's move on to letter E, Ordinance Special Event Code with Downtown Update. We're going back to you, Ms. Mattson, and thank you for staying up late with us also. And again, thank you to our guests for, going over a couple hours with us.
Good evening, Council. Tonight before you is a workshop related to the Special Events Code, and this is an exciting topic for me and for applicants who use the special events process. This was identified during the downtown master planning efforts as a process that really needed to be cleaned up and more streamlined for people and more transparent. So we have, staff has worked with our consultant framework to expedite the process for special events and just more clearly define different types of events and what process you precisely go forward. So this will definitely be an improvement to the existing code, which I find and many find confusing and hard to use. So there's a lot of work that's gone into this. And I just wanted to mention with any code change that has numerous code changes like this, our goal is obviously to get it perfect the first time, but we don't have a problem in CED using codes and then tweaking it later if there's something that isn't working how we intended or is slowing down or we get stuck. We can bring the code back and change it again. So don't feel like
with this code change or other massive code changes I'll be bringing to you later in the year, that everything has to be just darn perfect. You know, that's what we try to do, but it's just not reality. And I've been in the industry long enough to know, you know, there's things that come up and we will fix them if that occurs. So this is an overview of the presentation, and I already mentioned this was the reason for the update. It was identified by previous council and likely this current council to streamline more efforts downtown and make things easier for applicants. So this, as I mentioned, the current process is complex and difficult to navigate and leaves me and likely a lot of other people scratching their head on what the code says. So this will be good to clean up the effort. And here's the process we went through for the update. We did do interviews with various city departments and then the HAPO Center, and then outreach was also performed in February. That was direction of the City Council. We came earlier in the year, let's see here, in August of last year, and council asked us to do outreach, and we heard from existing special event applicants and invited a number of different entities and received feedback related to it, and put all of that feedback together in the ordinance presented in the packet related to special events. Some key improvements to the special event process identified are establishing clear thresholds for special event permits. And I, you know, just being here almost exactly a year now, about just over a year, you know, just defining special events and fielding questions was hard with the existing code, just to tell people like, yes, a special event permit is required. Here's what we need. Here's who needs to look at it. So in the code now, we have clear thresholds for special events. For example, if you have 100 or more people, you know, a permit is required if there's alcohol involved, if there's a high risk use inside the event. So there's different clear criteria cited in code, so that is less subjective and more clear to applicants and staff using the code. And then we've simplified the process to divide it into different permit categories. So for example, there's a category for a street festival permit. There's a category for a neighborhood block party, and we've attempted to streamline what's required for those so that you're not, you know, starting from scratch each time with each permit. And the idea is that over time, if applicants who are planning ahead, which we always recommend for special events, it is a pretty detailed process. If there are routine applicants with the same type of event going on, or routine events that, you know, hopefully after the first time they've perfected the process and they can go through like more of an ongoing permit, so you're not starting from scratch each time and using that permit over and over. And then more streamlined review timelines, and then simplified process for sales event and sidewalk sales permit, and then just clarifying what's the difference, because they all start sounding the same after a while, and so we've attempted to clarify what each of these permits mean in the code. So for expected outcomes, I've touched on this, just better, just less administrative burden, I think, is the takeaway for this slide, and then just being consistent with safety standards across the board. Previously, the code, you know, the code required that applicants submit a security plan, and that was very subjective in my opinion. So we'd put it on them to submit a plan, and then we'd proceed to, you know, tear it apart. And maybe it's different each time for different events. So we've tried to identify risk levels and put tables in the code that says, you know, if you're doing this type of event and, you know, have these components, it scores the event, and then with each score there's an associated suggested, it says estimated security plan for that event. So that takes out the subjectivity and makes it a little more straightforward for applicants. And it's not a perfect equation. It does say estimated in there, but then the police, that at least gives the applicants a starting point, so they're not just shooting in the dark, and they know what to provide, and then the police department and CED would review it and provide feedback and document as part of our process. You know, we recommend a deviation here because this event doesn't, you know, fall within the standards, and just have a more streamlined, more transparent process related to it. So we are recommending that the proposed attached ordinance be approved. We have a public hearing scheduled for the 20th, and there were a couple things I wanted to mention before we pass it over to the group for discussion. First is a public hearing is scheduled for the 20th. If there are extensive changes to this, I would still recommend holding the public hearing so we can hear from the public and just get that feedback, and then maybe legal can help weigh in as to whether we can leave, you know, the record open or some way to avoid holding another public hearing just to save in time. So we can cross that later if we need to. And then I wanted to mention that staff did receive some feedback from Councilmember Perales that was provided to staff and the group. So we're happy to discuss any of those as a group with council if you so desire. We do plan on, before the public hearing, clarifying language in the ordinance related to cost recovery for events for police presence at events that are not city sponsored. So that was in code before. It looks like it was struck out and then wasn't added in there in any sense for the new code, as far as I could see today. So we would like to add a stipulation in there that does allow us to do cost recovery, but in a flexible way. So we'll bring that back for the public hearing. And again, that would be for police coverage for special events. And I believe there's other cities that charge for public works time to, you know, put up barricades and whatnot. But in this code, we do say the applicant needs to provide their own means for that. So I don't think we need to cover that. I would just say additional police presence. So we'll be covering that. And then we do plan to add just a little bit of clarifying language related to sidewalk sales and what permit is needed. That's just a sentence or two. Here's the permit and the timeline, potentially marrying sidewalk cafe timeline since they're easier permits. And then we would like to look at the appeal language closer with legal. Currently, as written, it says that if an applicant appeals the decision by the CED director or the city processing it, they can appeal it to the city manager. And then if they don't like the city manager's decision, they can appeal that to city council. And what we typically try and do for the city with land use approvals is send appeals to the hearing examiner. They're a third party, third party that would review it and look at it. And that does, in my opinion, take pressure off council deciding on some of these things where you may know these people and work closely with them. So it sort of takes that out of the equation. So I would recommend we either keep it at appeals going to the city manager only, or the city manager, then the hearing examiner, or the hearing examiner only. So I would like to review that with legal and bring back a proposal. Happy to hear input on that as well. But we are trying to take more of the appeals away from city council and either send them and send them to the hearing examiner, just because he's not involved directly with this community and dealing with people every day. And I personally believe it's a best practice in that area. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have related to this code or discuss any topics you'd like.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Mattson. Councilmember Perales.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, no, I saw, I was watching golf yesterday. I went through this code and I saw a lot of things you already kind of touched on that I touched in my little diatribe that I put together. I don't think we need to go over this right now. It sounds like we have time prior to that hearing. If I need to set aside time to come in and talk about it, but I mean, one of the first things, I kind of spoke about was application timelines. Currently, it says applications shall be submitted in no less than 30 days. I think that's I think we could do better than that. I think for high impact events, 30 days. I wrote in there, I replaced with this type of red line change, 14 days prior for moderate impact events and 5 to 10 days for low impact events. Almost like a sidewalk sale. I don't think a sidewalk sale should have to be, someone has to come in for 30 days in advance. I mean, someone wants to do a pop-up, it should be able to happen within a day or a couple hours. Again, I can go on and on. I think there's some subjective language that I didn't like in the risk matrix. Currently, the cultural political sensitivity may draw protests or controversy. I'm not sure, guess where they're coming from or who would be the person deciding what's cultural and politically sensitive. I think if we're going to do that, it needs to be documented in history of safety incidents or credible threats associated with similar events. I want to make sure that's going to be handled properly and not used as a way to dissuade community events. You know, if I want to have a flag bearing day with my Patriot buddies, and then, I don't know, I'm not saying the staff is on the other side, but what if, I don't know, and they're like, no, this is kind of culturally sensitive, you need to have a security there, and the cops there, it's like, whoa, we're just gonna be waving around flags. Very bad example, but we start getting to that point where somebody's defining this, and if that's the case, we need to have a definition of what is considered cultural or politically sensitive. I think site plan requirements in some cases really aren't warranted. So, again, I have red line changes, and again, it goes on to talk about insurance requirements. I think low impact events shouldn't have to get any insurance, and it should be waived or reduced. Moderate impact events, maybe a minimum between 250 to 500,000, and because it seems like we have a blanket, essentially everything's a high impact event with a minimum of $1 million liability insurance. And so I'm not sure if that's a requirement from our risk pool, but those are just things that I saw in this document. So I can take a lot of this stuff offline. We have to the 20th. I think we can make this right. Maybe not get it all the way right, but definitely probably reduce the barriers. And I do have an issue with the appeal. I'll end with that. I wrote in here that I think they should, if someone wants to appeal the decision by the CED department, that I would rather just take out the city manager and just go straight to the council. We just had a waiver a couple of weeks ago where the Pride Festival wanted to have alcohol in there. If but my understanding that's going to get fixed. But if someone wants to appeal, then they can come to us. And I don't like the hearing examiner being the arbiter of that because he doesn't know our community. Sure, it's impartial, but he doesn't know our community. And maybe it's our code, something our code, is not allowing this event. But it's like 6 out of the 7 council members decide, hey, we actually like that event. Well, then we can make that decision. So, but these aren't hard things that I want to see rectified. These are just for discussion and stuff. And then just a couple of questions like yard sale permits. I thought those already got eliminated. I thought that was weird when I read that in there. About yard sale permits.
They've been eliminated in this code. So there's a strike through that says yard sale permits were pretty robust in Pasco, I noticed, for just, one-off innocent yard sales. I know that some people do take advantage of it and have a never-ending yard sale. That's a code enforcement issue. But for just the real, weekend yard sales, it was, in my opinion, an overkill. So we did actually strike that out. So that is removed in this code. If you see the red lines, it's kind of, if you search the word yard, you'll see where we took it out.
Yeah, and I saw that. I was just confused. I thought we already had gotten rid of that like a couple of years ago, and so I thought it was on when I saw that in there. But apparently we didn't, I guess.
You're correct. We removed it maybe about a year ago. However, this is a perfect example of our code that requires quite a bit of cleanup that Director Mattson has been working on. It's all over the place, and so you're going to see it pop up in places till we clean it up fully.
Okay, no, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council? Ms. Mattson, one of my favorite things about you is your enthusiasm to rectify and clean up, red tape or processes, or we might even say bureaucracy. Thank you so much for your excitement. It inspires me. It really does. I'm not being sarcastic at all. I really appreciate all the work you've done. Councilmember Perales, I did see your email. I was kind of busy the last couple hours before the meeting. Nothing to you about your timing of sending it, and I just kind of quickly perused it, and I saw some things that, I thought were worth a little more discussion, and a couple more I was on the fence for. Again, so Ms. Sigdell, direction?
Yes, there's some feedback on the table. Maybe right now is not the right time to ask for discussion on it, but maybe we can bring this back. We have a public hearing next week, which would have been for an action, but we can use that time for further discussion.
Okay.
And then move that action to implement this rewrite, essentially, of the special events program at a later regular meeting.
Okay, that sounds really good. Before moving on, let's open it up to the council chamber. Anybody like to speak on this issue? It's a good one. It affects all of us, special event codes. Anybody want to speak on this issue? Thank you. Step right up. Name and city or county of residence. Nice haircut, by the way, too.
Thanks. You bet. Thomas Grandbois, Big Maple Properties, 108 North 4th Avenue in Pasco. I guess I stayed here till 10, so I might as well have a bit of a comment. I want to thank staff for streamlining this process. I have friends, I have neighbors, I have tenants that have all done this, and for some it's easy, for others it's not, so let's make it easy for everybody. The one comment that I had about going to the hearing examiner, I think it's a good idea to bring it to council. I'm sure that council members would be mature enough and recuse themselves if they are friends, board members, owners. I know Councilmember Milne, I'm sure, or sorry, Mayor Pro Tem Milne, like with your issue with the bike ride that you were having at your building, I'm sure that you would have just recused yourself if there was something like that. So I think that there's opportunity for that, and there's enough board members here to call people out too if it starts getting abused. So that was it.
Perfect. Thank you for your comments. Anybody else in council chambers like to speak on this issue? Going once, going twice, 3 times. Okay. Letter F, resolution, professional services agreement amendment number 1 with RH2 Engineering Incorporated for design services for the Foster Wells Lift Station Improvements Project. Back to you, Director Sarah.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Again, this is going to be very brief. We are proposing to you an amendment, this amendment number 1, to a contract with RH2 Engineering. Is for improvements to be performed at the Foster Wells lift station. This is one of the 2 city-owned lift stations that serve our processors and send water to PWRF. We had issues with this lift station. It was known that we had some leaks and some mechanical concerns in it. This is one of the original lift stations. It was built in the 1990s. And it has had some work throughout the years, but certainly it needs some attention. Because we didn't know exactly what solution was going to be the best solution for the issues we were experiencing operationally. After the solicitation was done and RH2 was selected to provide design, we actually entered a small agreement for them to provide an assessment of the condition of the lift station and prioritize what activities need to be maybe top of mind, first address. And with that, once the results were completed and we had a discussion on alternatives and prioritization, we have now determined that the needs of this lift station include, and I will read this to be accurate here. There's some mechanical improvements that need to happen related to the pumps and related to the wet wells and ventilation of the wet well, along with electrical and control improvements that will help us respond to emergencies or identify emergencies before they're happening, and of course eliminate the leaks that we have in many of the manifolds where those pumps connect to each other and pump into a force main. So the amendment as proposed is to design those improvements that have been identified as priority, and it is for $251,923. It's not to exceed, so only the dollars that are the hours and time and efforts that are spent are being paid out, but the contract would allow for this amount of work, and that is all the way from starting the design now with those recommendations they have provided, all the way to supporting us during bidding and a little bit of construction. We'll see how that last phase goes. Depending on how much support we need during construction, we may be back in front of you asking for a new amendment to support us during that construction period. And this is a summary of the contract. Again, the small contract first was just for the assessment, and now we are proposing to increase the scope of that to for a total contract amount of $314,188, which the delta was that previous number 252 almost that I read. And with that, I am happy to address any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Sarah? Seeing none, looks like you might have got off easy. Go ahead, Councilmember Figueroa.
So, project for funds, it says that there's that amount that has been identified. Does it mean that we have that? Will we having access to that money, or? Yeah.
Yes, so we do have a bond for it, and we had received an award that was for PWRF in general. Our intent was to use that grant. It was from Representative Newhouse office, and it was administered through HUD. Our intent was to use that to offset Phase 3 cost, that is the Burnham project. But by the time the funds became available to the city, the project was already constructed, and that there are some issues with federal funding being applied to projects that have already undergone a process, and they're too far past the starting point. So we are working with that office to reallocate them. So it's specifically mentioned as identified because we have had discussions, and we believe it's going to be adequate and able to be used there, and it's a grant, so that's great news. But because we have some paperwork that needs to be finished, we didn't want to say it was awarded to this project. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Not seeing any. Let's move to council chamber. Anybody in the chamber want to speak on this issue? Going once, going twice. Not seeing anybody coming forward. Thank you. We will move on. Number 6, miscellaneous council discussion. Ms. Sigdale.
Just very few things, all related to outreach. We have our second transportation improvement program and capital improvement plan outreach meeting. Like Councilmember Campos, I believe, mentioned earlier, we're meeting at Ray Reynolds on Tuesday, which would be tomorrow, at 4 o'clock. So this will be in-person option. And then at the very same location the following day, so on Wednesday at 4:30, we will be meeting on the LRA housing, which is the sex offender housing, the discussion about Kennewick home that has been in the community. So we would like for more people to attend and give their input on the topic. And our Pasco Police Department has their Spring Citizens Academy that starts on April 14th at 6 p.m. And the classes are every Tuesday for 10 weeks for those who that registered in advance. And we have our Councilmember Hernandez who will be attending this session. So. That is all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Sigdale. Anybody else up at the dais have anything to discuss? Councilmember Prowse.
I just had two things. I'll be quick. I tossed around this idea. I think it's kind of surly, but the clearing the backlog queue for code enforcement complaints. It's my understanding that there's a substantial backlog and we're not really making any headway on it. So I don't know if we could get a presentation about what we're doing to kind of get out of that, because I do feel like there's complaints out there that are not getting addressed, especially recently with a lot of the wind, a lot of that fugitive dust. And we have codes in the books, and it just seems like we're not really implementing our code. Whether it's issuing a letter, fines. I mean, there's some areas where I feel like should be time where they're getting fined. In my opinion, I got contacted by some food truck from the hub today, and they're just getting sandblasted, and a lot of those food trucks didn't even open because they're just getting sandblasted by that parcel that's right next to them. So I kind of wanted to get a presentation about what we're doing to clear that backlog, and if we're not really making a headway, I would like for us to, I would put forward a motion to get rid of the backlog and just focus on stuff that's happening right now. So that's where I'm going with that. And then wanted to entertain or just speak out here in the public about trying to look for a speed study for Cook Lane. After a lot of people saw the news about the speed cushions on Court, and so I started getting two phone calls today about Cook Lane. Sounds like they're having some speeding issues, and so I don't know how the process kind of gets started from there. Is it just they got to make complaints about doing a speed study or having PD go out there and do their thing? Or is it, what do we do?
Well, as I mentioned before, from the public works side, the program is not funded. So we do understand people complaining, and we do understand the urgency that is felt by those that are, seeing people speed. But the reality is, just like we discussed today, reallocating dollars from within our deficient funds to fund new activities instead of some of the other core functions that we already had planned for. So there is not an active program for this year. I think that through the budgeting process, we can make sure that our budget reflects that priority that you all have put towards speeding, offsetting speeding, and addressing speeding. I will also point to the work that has been done through two different grants to identify safety issues and prioritization based on data. And so that might be something that we want to consider, to where instead of prioritizing based on number of calls or amount of people complaining, that we're just using the data we've collected to prioritize.
So I guess I'll just clarify. So are we in the data gathering stage of Cook Lane has this huge, robust problem? Would I advise them to make complaints to the city? Is that where we're at? Because I understand where you're coming from in regards to funding, but I'm just trying to figure out how do we get the ball rolling so that I can tell constituents who are concerned about, the streets they live on, how to go about this.
Yes, certainly. Anybody that has concerns can contact the Public Works number, and we can add them to our list, and we can take data and start analyzing. We're in the process of hiring a contracted traffic engineer to support our engineering department because that position has been open. So right now we've been operating without one since the beginning of the year. And so as we have a traffic engineer on call, we can continue to work through analyzing the data that we collect.
Yeah. So yeah, back to my first one. I don't know. I want to get the pulse of the council about having a presentation about the current code enforcement backlog. If you guys be willing to kind of hear a presentation. I'm open to it.
Yeah, I would be open to that too. I mean, others obviously should speak up. I'm one of 7, Mr. Cotta.
Yeah, I haven't had any complaints about it, from any constituents or anything, but you have, and there's no reason to not look into it.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that. Yep, enough thumbs up or whatever, yeah. Yeah, that would be fine. Anybody have anything else? Okay, one thing, you guys, police department interview. You guys, for the sake, I know this is a biggie. Just trying to spread around. One of the things was to be transparent and fair. Millie and Cotta recently were on the panel to do the finance director. If we ever hire an attorney, it's you and me, Councilmember Perales. And then the appointments to boards and commissions is Cotta, Perales, and Grimm or whatever. And so for the sake of just trying to spread around in fairness, I talked to Councilmember Campos and Councilmember Figueroa about the option of one of them sitting on that interview panel with me. And it was decided that that would be Councilmember Campos is going to join. But just to remember, you guys, we're going to all have interactions with these, potential candidates we're going to do. We don't make the decision. That's at the city manager's office. And I know this is a big decision. The police chief is really important, right? Deputy Chief Cook, to the future of our city and all that. But I just wanted to know that it's going to be me and Campos sitting on the interview panel, and that we'll all get opportunities, though, otherwise to ask. And ultimately, it's not our decision anyways. That's with our city manager, who I think is doing a great job for us and has my full confidence. So with that, we will move on to the very last item. And yep, no executive session, right? No, thank you. We're adjourned then. Number 8. Thank you.